The Hogwarts professor mixed into Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126, Lockhart's $0 purchase plan. Deep in Gringotts, the Goblin's Hut. As a place that manages the wealth of the entire British wizarding world, Gringotts has a large number of goblins at all times. In fact, because of the goblins' greedy nature for wealth, many goblins live directly in Gringotts, enjoying the joy of wandering around the vaults of a large amount of treasure every day. Over time, Gringotts has become a residence for goblins, their place of work, and their place of life. Deep in Gringotts, every goblin has his own hut. Some goblins work during the day and rest at night, while some goblins do the opposite. In short, Gringotts is guaranteed to operate 24 hours a day, constantly absorb the wealth of the entire wizarding world. The goblin turner is a typical worker who works during the day and rests at night. So at night, he returned to his hut and excitedly put the tip he got from Lockhart today into his treasured money jar. Then he recounted the amount of money accumulated in the money jar. After finding that there was no problem, he happily hugged the jar and lay on the bed, slowly falling asleep. At the same time, Lockhart, who was far away in Hogsmeade Village, locked the mark he left on the Gringer goblin not through mental perception. He felt that the life breath of the mark was very stable, and there was no large amount of life breath around. Lockhart nodded secretly, with a thoughtful look on his face. Immediately, for the gold coin in front of him, he directly ordered, "Gold coin, follow me later. Don't talk, just do whatever I say." "Okay, master." The gold coin nodded excitedly, almost knocking his head to the ground. However, it seemed that the gold coin also knew that Lockhart didn't like it, so he quickly put his head away, widened his eyes, and looked at Professor Lockhart with expectation. Seeing this, Lockhart didn't say much, holding the hanging ring, and quickly drew a circle according to the location in his mind. In less than 2 or 3 seconds, a portal with sparks appeared in front of Lockhart. He took the gold coin directly through the portal. Well, as for Gugu, who wanted to catch up, Lockhart was worried about any accidents, so he just let him stay in the house and wait. When Gugu looked at the large amount of food in front of him, he said there was no problem. The keeper should still be busy with his own things and not disturb him from eating. Lockhart entered the goblin's hut, looking at not lying on the bed, hugging the jar and falling asleep. The corners of his mouth twitched a little. It was the first time he saw someone, no, a goblin, sleeping with a jar. Feeling the large amount of sickles and gold galleons hidden in the jar, Lockhart was once again speechless about the goblin's greedy nature. Then so out of the body, Lockhart waved his wand and cast the Imperious Curse directly at Not, who was sleeping. Now the other party had no sense of defense at all. If he didn't lose the spell now, when would he wait? In an instant, a green light emerged from the tip of Lockhart's wand, and then quickly shot towards the goblin Not's head. Boom. After being hit by the spell, the goblin Not's body stiffened, his hands naturally dropped, and the cans placed in front of his chest naturally fell on the bed, making a thumping sound. However, due to the good sealing of the cans, the gold galleons and sickles did not fall out. The goblin Not, who was sleeping, suddenly felt that he had come to a very warm place, like heaven, and was completely immersed in it. "Not, get up," Lockhart ordered directly. As if called by something, the goblin Not stood up in a trance, staring at Lockhart, as if like a piece of wood. The gold coins behind saw this scene, and their eyes flashed with surprise, but they were not particularly panicked. The Avery family, or which pureblood family, has not cast the 3 unforgivable curses. As long as they are not used in public, it will be fine. Even if they are really caught, with the power of the pureblood family, they can fool around if they really want to. It's just a matter of how much it costs. "Tell me, where is Bellatrix's vault?" Lockhart ordered directly. Well, besides wanting to make a fortune, he came to Gringotts this time for Voldemort's most loyal subordinate, Bellatrix Lestrange. To be precise, the target this time was Bella's vault. He could clearly remember that Bella's vault contained all the wealth of the Lestrange family, and there was also Voldemort's Horcrux, the Hufflepuff cup. This time, he could definitely make a fortune. As his thoughts turned, Lockhart heard the goblin not reply. "Sir, it's the underground vault number 472. Can you open the vault?" Lockhart asked. The gold coin behind him saw this scene and said nothing. Even a hint of excitement flashed in his eyes. "No." The goblin Loke shook his head and said, "That belongs to the bottom of the vault, and I'm not responsible for its management. And the key is also managed by a special goblin." Hearing the goblin not's answer, Lockhart was a little disappointed, but he didn't care. This situation was within his expectations. Then he gave a direct order: "Draw a map from my vault to the underground vault number 472. As he spoke, Lockhart waved his wand, and a piece of parchment and a feather appeared in front of the goblin Knot. Hearing Lockhart's order, Knot picked up the parchment and the feather pen, walked to the table next to him, and started drawing very seriously. Seeing this scene, Lockhart's mouth curled up slightly. Turning around, he said to the gold coin behind him, "Gold coin, I will give you 2 tasks." "Okay, master." Hearing the order from his master, the gold coin danced with excitement. Gold coin promises to complete the task. For the gold coin, just joining his master's command, he can participate in such an important task, which shows that the master values him. This is the greatest honor for the house elf. Seeing the somewhat excited movements of the gold coin, Lockhart frowned slightly, but did not say anything, and ordered, "2 things must be done well. First, keep an eye on this goblin. If he shows any signs of waking up, knock him out immediately." "Okay." Gold coin understands. Gold coin nodded heavily. "Second thing, wait a moment, we will go to another vault. All you have to do is take good care of my body. Don't worry, master, gold coin will never let anyone touch you." Seeing the gold coin nod quickly, Lockhart smiled with satisfaction. Then, he quietly watched the goblin Knot draw a map leading to Bella's vault. Soon, the goblin Knot placed a map in front of Lockhart. Lockhart looked at the large number of black lines of varying thicknesses, as well as different markers one after another. He casually ordered Knot to explain the entire map. The goblin Knot pointed to a point on the map and introduced, "Sir, this is the location of your vault." Then he continued along a thick black line. "This is the route to Bellatrix's vault. You will pass vault 820 in the middle and then turn." Please support all readers. I updated 1 chapter this morning and the average subscription dropped again. Fortunately, it has grown a little. I hope that after 5 updates today, it will not drop below 1100. Chapter 127, The Fairy with Guns. Gringotts, Vault 1273. Vault 1273 has always been Lockhart's vault, even if Lockhart had taken away all the wealth in the vault before. However, Lockhart still kept it, as long as he paid the vault fee. At this moment, inside the empty vault, suddenly, a portal with sparks quietly emerged. Then, Lockhart walked out first, followed by the goblin Knot and the house elf Gold. Gold saw the strange spell cast by his master again, and his eyes were full of curiosity. However, as a basic quality of a house elf, he should not disturb his master, and naturally he would not ask questions. After seeing everyone come in, Lockhart waved his hand, and the portal suddenly closed. Seeing the silver white walls and the empty floor all around, he nodded with satisfaction. This was the safe place he had prepared at the beginning, the vault that had been tightly closed. Who would have thought that he would be here? You know, the goblins of Gringotts cast a large-scale anti-apparition spell for safety. It is to prevent wizards from sneaking into the Gringotts vault through the space spell. However, this cannot imprison the teleportation magic of Kamar-Taj and the Marvel world. Even if the principle of the anti-apparition spell is to disrupt the spatial fluctuations and prevent wizards from teleporting. But Kamar-Taj's teleportation magic is based on the power of Vishanti. Although it consumes a lot of energy to perform, and is even a little awkward, it definitely does not affect its use. Then, Lockhart took out the parchment map again, and imprinted the route map firmly in his mind. Looking at the door of the vault, he told the gold coin to take care of his body and the goblin Knot. He found a corner in the vault, leaned against the silver white wall, and sat down cross-legged. With his hands on his knees, he concentrated his mind, and visualized a mysterious, complex, and profound rune pattern. The magic power flowed, as if calling and resonating something. Then, he jumped suddenly. Soul projection. Suddenly, Lockhart's soul flew out of his body, looking at his own transparent soul body like a ghost, and smiled with satisfaction. Then, the thought turned, and a certain soul body was materialized, so that ordinary creatures could see it with the naked eye. "Master, what's wrong with you? Are you okay?" Seeing Lockhart's soul suddenly appearing, especially the ghost-like body of the other party, the gold coin asked loudly in panic. He had encountered such a state before, that is, when the master died, he turned into a ghost. This made him feel very panic. "Gold coin, calm down." Looking at the panicked gold coin, Lockhart opened his mouth, and the voice was transmitted to the gold coin's ears through the magic resonance. "I have no problem. This is my soul. You take care of my body now, and wait for my soul to return." Hearing the familiar voice in his ears, the panicked gold coin was relieved and hurried to Lockhart's side, with a look of full alert. "Gold coin, well done. Keep doing this, and wait for my return." Seeing this, Lockhart praised, turned around, hid his soul, and flew towards the door. But, it was not as easy for the soul to penetrate the thick door of the vault as Lockhart imagined. It may be related to the fact that the vault door is made of magical materials. But the impact was not great. He mobilized more soul power and successfully passed through. Turning around and looking back at the pale golden door on his vault, Lockhart was more confident in his plan. Then, according to the map drawn by Locke in his memory, Lockhart flew towards Bella's vault. Since Bella's vault was a relatively precious wizard family inheritance vault, to be precise, it was the Lestrange family inheritance vault that she controlled after marrying into the Lestrange family. Therefore, it was at the bottom of the Gringotts vault, while his vault was in the middle and upper levels, a little far away. But he was not in a hurry. According to his soul power, there was no problem with the soul projection state for a whole day. While wandering along the map route, Lockhart looked at the surrounding vaults. To be honest, he now had an impulse to enter a vault at random, and then start his own zero-yuan purchase plan. Unfortunately, he didn't know who these vaults belonged to. What if someone later discovered that the wealth was lost and reported to Gringotts? It would be bad to arouse the other party's vigilance. To be honest, the magic power of the Harry Potter world is not as strong as that of the Marvel world, but in terms of the degree of secrecy, the magic of the Harry Potter world is not weak. If some wizards or goblins really find traces through certain methods, it will be really troublesome. He has many plans later, which must be carried out by soul projection. Being restricted like this is really not worth the loss. Suddenly, Lockhart, who was on his way, had his eyes fixed. He saw a dozen goblins wearing crimson clothes, like guards, with serious faces, riding 5 or 6 carts, sliding along the iron chain to the depths of the vault. This is not surprising. What surprised Lockhart was that these goblins actually had pistols on their waists. That's right, Lockhart watched repeatedly. He found that this group of goblins actually had magical items similar to pistols on their waists, and even the leader had a wand on his waist. This made Lockhart feel a little bad. He was not surprised to see someone holding a gun in the Muggle world, but seeing wizards holding guns in the wizarding world is enough to make people feel surprised. A goblin holding a gun is enough to surprise, and even panic wizards. You know, according to the contract signed by the goblins as losers, they are not allowed to hold wands and various lethal magic items. Although the restrictions on magic items have been weakened a lot over time, but the wand is still a taboo for wizards. Wizards will never allow any goblin to hold a wand. And what did Lockhart see now? The leading goblin held a wand, and a group of goblins followed behind, with magic items similar to guns on their waists. Lockhart was not surprised at all about the wand. After all, every creature will find a way to survive for themselves. Goblins like Gringotts almost control the entire wizard world's monetary system. Although they are supervised by the Ministry of Magic, they will never give up the exploration of force. But magic items similar to guns shocked Lockhart. This shows that goblins are definitely involved with the Muggle world. Otherwise, magic items similar to guns will never appear. Lockhart, an alchemist, said that if you want to refine magic items similar to firearms, you must be familiar with a large number of firearms and the principles contained in them. Even magic items like this, that are full of certain technological content, require a lot of exploration. and the length of time for research will not be short. Only in this way can technology and magic be compatible. And now I see goblins wearing them in large numbers. What does this mean? The goblins have bad intentions on the one hand. Goblins and muggles definitely have in-depth contact. This made Lockhart feel uneasy. As a wizard, he naturally has to consider it from the standpoint of wizards. And in a war, what will be the fate of the losers? You can witness it one by one through the history of magic. The worst is the house elves. Just like the gold coins now, they will be enslaved by wizards forever. And the best result is like the goblins before. Don't look at the current goblins. But the goblins at that time were forced to stop using wands, give up all force, and force them to provide services for wizards. The term service is just a nice word. In reality, they still play a role similar to slaves, but without the restrictions of house elves. The scene in front of him gave Lockhart a headache. He had to temporarily give up the idea of going to Bella's vault and follow the group of goblins to get information. Chapter 128, Anti-Thief Waterfall, War Between Wizards and Liches. Deep inside Gringotts, captain of the Goblin Guard, Donny Dean, looked ahead with a serious face, tightly holding the space bag in his hand. His mission was simple, but extremely important, to escort a large amount of precious magic materials to the goblin alchemist Beano Kruz. With his current status, he understood the importance of Master Beano's mission very well. It was directly related to whether the goblins could rise again. Thinking of this, he looked back at the guards behind him, especially the Crimson Flame Dragon's second magic guns on their waists. His eyes were full of passion and hope. This was a weapon jointly developed by Beano and other goblin alchemists. Beyond the constraints of the wand, it can completely allow a large number of goblins to quickly have combat power, although it was rumored that this was related to muggles. But Donny didn't believe that a group of muggles without any magic power could have such a good thing. At most, it would just provide them with enough gold raw materials and ideas. Donny thought maliciously. He felt strongly dissatisfied with some goblins inside Gringotts, because they actually showed friendliness to muggles, saying that both sides were equal and should cooperate more. He was extremely disgusted with such an idea. Goblins are a noble race with a long history. It's fine that wizards have magic, but a race like muggles who don't even have magic are only worthy of being servants who provide them with raw materials. I really don't know what those goblins are thinking. Just because of a temporary defeat, do you have to abandon the pride of being a goblin? Damn Martin. When Donny thought of the Goblin Martin, the concept of cooperation with muggles and wizards that he had always promoted emerged in his mind. His face was gloomy, and even a trace of murderous intent rose in his eyes. But he immediately restrained his thoughts in his mind. Now goblins cannot split up, and before they rise, they still need the cooperation of these goblins. This is a view that his immediate boss Rex Rosa has always told him. He thinks Rex is right, only when the palm is clenched and becomes a fist, it is the most offensive. This is a proverb passed down by goblins since ancient times. But what he didn't notice was that if you look at it from the perspective of magic, there is a looming figure behind them. At this moment, Lockhart looked at the cart sliding deeper and deeper, thinking, this group of goblins, like specially trained warriors, stood on the cart without exchanging a word, fully alert. It seemed that they were guarding something and waiting for something. However, due to limited information, he didn't know. He could only fly behind and follow quietly, hoping to get some useful information. After a while, Lockhart felt that the speed of the front was gradually slowing down and stopped on a platform. He was refreshed and knew that the destination had been reached. Then, watching the leading goblin get off the cart, followed by dozens of goblins behind him, Lockhart immediately followed. Soon, after passing the platform, he entered a corridor. The environment of the corridor was very bright, because a magic similar to the bright spell was cast above. Then, following the goblins in front, they kept turning and changed to a new corridor, moving deeper. Looking at the densely packed corridors, Lockhart felt a little dizzy, but he had nothing to worry about. He had made marks before to ensure that he would not lose his position. Soon, Lockhart saw the goblin step into another platform and looked at the platform from the corridor. A large number of colorful raindrops could be seen falling from the sky, and these raindrops contained a large amount of magic fluctuations. This made Lockhart's eyes condense. If he guessed correctly, this should be the goblin's most famous alchemical item, the anti-thief waterfall. A top-level defensive alchemical item that only goblins know how to refine, which can make any magic ineffective. In the original book, even the Imperious Curse, one of the 3 unforgivable spells, would be ineffective if it was hit by the anti-thief waterfall. It can be called the Wizard World version of the Forbidden Magic area. This made Lockhart hesitate. He didn't know whether the anti-thief waterfall would affect his soul state. Despite this, seeing that most of the goblins had entered the area of the anti-thief waterfall, Lockhart still wanted to take a gamble. After the goblins had finished walking, Lockhart walked to the entrance of the cave, stretched out his soul arm, and touched the colorful raindrops falling from the air. Woo! Hearing the sound of a large number of raindrops in his ears, he felt the raindrops produced by the anti-thief waterfall gently penetrate his arm. Lockhart exhaled lightly. It seems that the anti-thief waterfall will not make his soul state visible, but he can still feel the impact of the waterfall on his soul. He roughly estimated that, if he continued to be drenched in the anti-thief waterfall, his soul would most likely be seriously affected. After all, this is equivalent to a large amount of magic power directly impacting the soul. If there is no impact, it is really a joke. Fortunately, the area covered by the anti-thief waterfall is not long. With his mind turning, Lockhart flew forward quickly. A large number of colorful raindrops continued to impact his soul, and Lockhart felt a lot of tingling. Frowning, he increased his speed. Soon, he passed the area of the anti-thief waterfall. After passing through, Lockhart exhaled deeply, as if he had been hit by a large amount of hail. Although it was bearable, it still felt very painful. Then, he turned around in mid-air and looked at the goblins who were still walking in the anti-thief waterfall area. After waiting silently for a while, the leading goblin took the lead in walking out of the anti-thief waterfall area and continued to move forward. Lockhart continued to follow silently behind. He wanted to see what the hell these goblins were doing. They were almost mastering the currency system of the wizarding world. Could it be that they were preparing to start a new round of war between wizards and goblins? A war between wizards and liches? Lockhart shook his head slightly and quickly cleared the inexplicable thoughts that emerged in his mind. Soon, he followed the goblins into a spacious hall. Lockhart could see that there were many goblins holding guns and even one scattered around. They formed an encirclement formation, as if they would immediately launch a crazy attack as soon as there was an enemy. And deep in the hall, there was a half-closed wooden door. There were guards guarding the door tightly. There was no need to guess, and you knew that there were definitely goblin secrets inside. Sure enough, the goblin captain solemnly handed a space bag to the guard at the door. Then he turned around and left with his team. As for Lockhart, he took the opportunity of their delivery to sneak into the room. It must be said that the Harry Potter world is not sure whether it is due to the influence of the world environment or the knowledge monopoly. It is a bit biased on the road of soul research, and it is a bit too much in pursuit of lethality and longevity. For example, the killing curse, the Horcrux, etc. There seems to be no systematic research on the soul itself. Kamar-Taj has already developed systematic soul magic such as soul projection, soul whipping, etc. It involves combat, treatment, assistance, etc., which is more comprehensive. As his thoughts turned, Lockhart's soul entered the room behind the wooden door. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129, Looting the Vault. Deep inside Gringotts, Bellatrix's vault. In the center of the vault, Lockhart's soul quietly emerged, looking at the piles of gold galleons and the various books, cloaks, boots and other items that emit a lot of magic fluctuations placed around. When he thought that all these things in front of him would belong to him, Lockhart's heart was warmed. What a wave of fat. Sure enough, in terms of short-term benefits, how can business be better than $0 shopping? Then, Lockhart seemed to inspect the treasures in the vault like a master, or he was looking for the target, this time the Hufflepuff Gold Cup. Before, he followed the goblins to explore the relevant information about magic firearms. As a result, after entering the heavily guarded room, he thought he could get some important information. But he only saw the goblins studying all chemical items, and the space bags escorted over were also various magic materials. The value is quite high, but there is no hot information that Lockhart wants to hear. He was watching what the goblins were studying next to him. The result was the magic firearms he had seen before, but they were not refining, but studying how to increase their power. After that, there was a series of failed magic experiments by the Goblin Alchemy Master. Really, it was a waste of time. Lockhart was speechless. It was not that the alchemy level of these masters was low. After all, it was normal to fail in experiments. What made Lockhart speechless was that he could not get any valuable information at all, and it was just a pure waste of time. Even if he got the process of refining magic guns, it would be a gain for him. Unfortunately, his gain was just a series of failed experiences. If he was in his original body now, it would be fine, but unfortunately he was only in the soul state and could not cast too many spells. The most important thing was that there were also many goblin guards in the house. Otherwise, if he caught a goblin master and cast a complete set of Imperious Curse services, he would probably get a lot of interesting information. Finally, Lockhart left here with a regretful look, ready to go shopping for nothing as planned. As Lockhart went around the entire vault, he saw the appearance of the Hufflepuff Gold Cup from the corner smoothly. However, he did not forget that in the original plot, Voldemort cast a series of spell traps on the Hufflepuff Gold Cup. So he did not touch it easily. Remember the current scene, turn around and leave, and fly towards the direction of his own body. Lockhart's vault. Lockhart's body leaned against the silver white wall, and the house elf gold coin was on full alert, as if an enemy might appear at any time. Not far away, the goblin Knot, who was cast with the Imperious Curse, stood there with a dazed look on his face, his body shaking slightly. Lockhart saw this scene and nodded slightly. Sure enough, the house elves that have been cultivated for thousands of years are reliable. Then, he no longer cared about the gold coins that were on full alert, and flew directly back to his body. But, the moment the soul returned to the body, Lockhart felt a cold breath brought to his body by the wall and the floor. He slowly opened his eyes, looked at the gold coin in front of him, and said gently, "Gold coin, no need to be on guard anymore. Master, you are finally alive." Seeing Lockhart's movement behind him, the gold coin exclaimed loudly, with a tone full of surprise. When Lockhart heard the word alive, his head was immediately filled with black lines. But he didn't say anything, waved his hand, and said lightly, "Gold coin, if you can't speak, don't speak. Next, there is something for you." As he said, Lockhart ignored the somewhat discouraged gold coin and directly opened a portal to the goblin hut. After sending the goblin lot back and removing the Imperious Curse, he casually used Oblivion to deal with the other party's memory. Lockhart then opened a portal to Bellatrix's vault, entered it with the gold coin. The second time he entered the vault, a large amount of treasures came into view. Although the shock brought was far less than the first time, it still made Lockhart's heart warm. Then appear. Lockhart waved his wand and released the apparition spell one after another. A large area of milky white light covered the entire vault. In Lockhart's eyes, the entire vault was filled with pale white mist. However, there was a small part of the place which showed traces of grey, black and deep red. And this place happened to be the corner where Lockhart found the Hufflepuff Gold Cup before. Seeing this, Lockhart nodded slightly. It was good that there was only a magic trap in that place. Then, looking at the gold coin next to him, he handed him a space extension bag and ordered, "Gold coin, take the space extension bag. Put away all the gold galleons in the vault." As he said, Lockhart pointed to the corner of the Hufflepuff Gold Cup and continued to order gold coin. "Pay attention. Do not move any items in this place." "Okay, master." Hearing Lockhart's order, Gold Coin took the space extension bag and replied loudly. Then, Jinbe opened the space extension bag, skillfully used magic, waved his arms, cast a levitation spell, and controlled the gold galleon to float into the space extension bag. At this moment, Lockhart took a look and didn't care too much. Now, he came to the Hufflepuff Gold Cup, waved his wand, released various detection spells, and analyzed the magic trap in front of him. Urgently show up. Attribute detection. With the feedback from various spells, Lockhart obviously understood the composition of the magic trap. The first and most obvious one is the copying spell. As long as anyone touches a Hufflepuff Gold Cup, the Gold Cup will be copied in large quantities. Completely confuse the judgment of the toucher. If the copying spell doesn't work, then there are a lot of black magic combination traps such as the Fiery Fire Curse and the Black Eclipse Curse. If the holder is not careful and is hit by a lot of black magic, he will be half dead if not dead, even if the holder escapes this magic trap. According to Lockhart's analysis, there should be a very secret positioning spell in the Hufflepuff Gold Cup. It was convenient for Voldemort to find the location of the Hufflepuff Cup and retrieve his Horcrux in time. TSK. If he really didn't pay attention and was caught by Voldemort, then something really interesting would happen. Seeing this series of meticulous magic traps, Lockhart felt a little troubled, but he didn't feel it was particularly difficult. Turning around, he saw that the gold coins had already collected most of the gold galleons. Then, he began to collect various magic items from the vicinity of the Hufflepuff Cup. There was no need to check the gold galleons collected by the gold coins. After all, there was nothing wrong with them being placed in front of him. He needed to personally check the magic books and magic items to prevent any mistakes. With a wave of his wand, a large number of magic books floated in front of him. Lockhart quickly scanned the titles of the books, selected the more precious books, and put them aside. The other books were placed in the space extension belt. The same was true for magic items. It would specifically deal with these more precious books and magic items. Soon, with Lockhart and the gold coins working together to collect, the treasury that was originally full of wealth soon became penniless. Only the silver white wall was left, reflecting the figure of Lockhart and the gold coins. After sorting everything out, Lockhart patted the space extension bag in his hand with satisfaction, and a bright smile appeared on his face. Then, he focused his eyes on the Hufflepuff Gold Cup. Thank you for your support. The average subscription data has successfully stabilized at around 1150. Dear big guys, please work hard, stabilize it at 1200, and add another update. Chapter 130 Professor Horn who ran away with the money. Late at night, deep in the Forbidden Forest. Late at night in the Forbidden Forest, the sky was as pure as a piece of black velvet, and above it, a crescent moon was emitting a glow. The sounds of animals and the rustling of leaves in the wind complemented each other, as if playing a nocturne. Suddenly, a circle with sparks suddenly appeared. Gold coins, don't worry about it, hurry up with a shout. A blond man in a tattered grey wizard robe ran out of the circle quickly, and behind him, a house elf jumped out directly. Lockhart looked at the large number of Hufflepuff Gold Cup replicas that kept pouring out, and the crazy burning fiend-fi through the portal, and a trace of fear flashed in his eyes. Almost at the moment when the gold coins escaped, Lockhart quickly waved his hand to close the portal. Lockhart exhaled a deep breath, looking at the gold coins in front of him whose clothes had been burned to tatters. There was also the burnt smell coming from his body and the large number of holes in his clothes, and a bitter smile rose on his face. Voldemort is indeed the top Dark Lord in the wizarding world, but he still underestimated him. Or maybe he had been too successful recently, and was a little too proud. Voldemort's magic trap taught him a lesson. He thought he could easily break the trap, but in the process of breaking it, he might have touched some unknown points. All the traps exploded at the same time, making Lockhart embarrassed. Fortunately, his teleportation magic still worked. Otherwise, in such a closed environment of the vault, it would have been destroyed long ago. Despite this, Bella's vault might have been destroyed, and even the dragon outside would have been burned to death by the fiend-fi. Even if the fiend-fi was not stopped in time, I'm afraid Gringotts would suffer this time. You know, that is the vault of the entire wizarding world. However, Lockhart looked at the golden cup in his hand, and a hint of joy rose on his face. Although the process was a bit tortuous, his goal was finally achieved. However, when he thought of the sudden trap just now, Lockhart was thoughtful. He waved his wand, and a dark blue small cabinet prepared in advance appeared in front of him. Then Lockhart put the Hufflepuff cup inside. Click. The cabinet door closed, and dense dark blue magic patterns flashed on the cabinet. All the breath, power, and fluctuations of the Hufflepuff cup were completely locked. Humph. Looking at the cabinet in front of him, that had been sealed with multiple seals, Lockhart snorted coldly. When the trap broke out, there was no time to think about it, so he ran away quickly. But now thinking about it carefully, there was no guidance from Voldemort's Horcrux here. Lockhart just ate his wand alive. When he thought of this, he felt that the Hufflepuff cup he had just obtained was a bit tricky. This soul fragment might not be peaceful. Well, it's not as good as the young Voldemort in the Black Notebook. He was also planning to hire a second worker for himself. With his thoughts turning, Lockhart looked at the dim forbidden forest and heard the roars of a large number of birds and beasts in the distance, and the rustling sound brought by the breeze, especially the ragged appearance of himself and the gold coins. Lockhart gently moved the hanging ring and opened a portal again. With a light step, he returned to his home. The gold coins behind him jumped directly into the portal without being called. The next day at noon, in the Hogwarts cafeteria, Lockhart sat in the professor's seat, holding a fork and tapping the plate lightly. Instantly, a spicy steak appeared on the plate, with some broccoli, cherry tomatoes, etc. scattered around. Lockhart smelled the aroma and nodded with satisfaction. It seems that the recipe he gave to Hogwarts with elves was not given in vain. This level is a level higher than before. While thinking, he picked up the knife and fork, cut a small piece, put it in his mouth, and slowly tasted the tenderness of the beef. Well, it tastes good. Lockhart, your steak is well made. Did you ask the house elves to make it? Professor Flitwick next to him asked. Yes, Dean. Lockhart nodded lightly and continued. I gave a recipe, and they studied it for a few days, and knew how to make it. At this point, Lockhart also gave a small thumbs up to the elves' learning ability. Although they can't reach the level of genius, they are at least better than ordinary people. In other words, their character of taking pride in labor and being ashamed of laziness allows them to focus more on doing things and improves their learning ability. Whether it is wizards, muggles, or other creatures, as long as they focus, they can achieve results more easily than ordinary people. Hearing Lockhart's reply, Professor Flitwick's eyes lit up. His mind was full of thoughts, and the corners of his mouth curled up, as if he had gained a lot of inspiration. Then, the two chatted while eating. Lockhart, students have given your course a high evaluation recently. Professor Flitwick praised. No. Lockhart was very humble, and then added a little. It's all because the previous defense against the dark arts professor left a good foundation. Haha. Professor Flitwick understood what Lockhart meant and laughed. Lockhart also had a faint smile on his face. Suddenly, Professor Lockhart, have you heard about what happened in Gringotts last night? Hearing Professor Flitwick's question, Lockhart's smile froze. Then he asked curiously, Professor Flitwick, have you heard any news? I saw in the Daily Prophet that it was just a fire. Fire. Professor Flitwick showed a mocking smile on his face. What kind of fire can mobilize the auras of the Ministry of Magic? Then, he whispered, Lockhart, I heard from my friends that it was Fiendfire. It's obvious that another dark wizard sneaked into Gringotts yesterday. The goblins must have discovered their traces, so they set off a Fiendfire to attract attention and escaped. TSK. After listening to Professor Flitwick's speculation, Lockhart felt a little strange in his heart, but said with admiration, Professor, you have a keen eye. It's completely logical and 80% of it is the fact. It's a loss for the Daily Prophet not to invite you to be the editor-in-chief. Haha, no, I just have many friends and a wide range of information. Professor Flitwick said with a smile on his face. Lockhart stood up and nodded. As a champion of many battles, Flitwick has become friends with many people. In addition, as a professor at Hogwarts, he has been keeping in touch with them through letters. Suddenly, Lockhart's heart moved, and as if chatting, he asked Flitwick, Professor Flitwick, I have something to ask Professor Horn recently, but I haven't received a reply. Do you have any news about him? Hearing Lockhart's question, Professor Flitwick also frowned slightly and sighed. Horn, there was news about him at the beginning of the year, but until now, For some reason, there is no news. I sent him a letter before, but I didn't get a reply. Lockhart listened and kept thinking in his mind. At the beginning of the year, if he guessed correctly, it should be last semester. And the only major event that happened last semester was that Voldemort possessed Quirrell and robbed the Philosopher's Stone. When he thought of this, all Lockhart's confusions were cleared up. In the original plot, Professor Horn kept avoiding Voldemort because of the Horcrux. After receiving the news that Voldemort had reappeared, running away was naturally the best choice. No wonder he sold the fueling potion. He wanted to run away with the money. Really, the reality of the world. Now, I hope that the backup plan I left at the auction will work. P.S. I would like to ask for support from all the readers. The average subscription was just over 1,200 this morning, and it dropped sharply as soon as the update was updated. Call for support. Call for support. The average subscription has stabilized, and we will continue to update 5 times. Thank you Mente for the 2000 points reward. Thank you Kirenjian for the 788 points reward. Thank you Soul Harvester Lizan, Guo Cheng, Book Friend 160,520,191,918,349. Kirenjian, Dadeo Mariah, Kuangbio Zinshan, Yun Luo, and Alakan for their monthly tickets. Chapter 131 The Mysterious Forces Against Voldemort. Hogwarts, the Principal's Office. Snape, how much do you know about what happened in Gringotts last night? Dumbledore sat on a chair, looked at Snape in front of him, stroked his beard, and asked gently, "Don't let me know which dark wizard did it. If I catch him, I must make him know what it means to live a life worse than death." Hearing Dumbledore's question, Snape cursed viciously. He was in a terrible mood. He received a notice from the goblins this morning. The fiend fire in Gringotts last night caused damage to many vaults, and his vault was one of them. Some of the items inside were damaged to varying degrees. Now he wanted to cut the dark wizard who sneaked into Gringotts last night into pieces. Of course, the same is true for the goblins in Gringotts. This group of goblins, on the grounds of an accident, did not intend to compensate for his losses. This made Snape very angry. Hearing Snape's curse, Dumbledore did not react. He collected all the information about what happened in Gringotts at the first time. Naturally, he knew about Snape. "Then do you know where the source of the fiend fire is?" Dumbledore asked. "Headmaster, just tell me where it is. No need to beat around the bush." Snape, who was in a bad mood, said lightly, "If you know who sneaked into the dark wizard last night, tell me. I will make him regret coming to this world." Dumbledore shook his head and said, "Snape, there are orders to arrest people. But I believe you will never guess the source of the fiend fire." Looking at Snape's frowning brows and a somewhat dissatisfied expression, Dumbledore said seriously, "It's Bellatrix's vault." "Bella?" Snape muttered to himself, doubtful and uncertain. "Yes, it's her." Dumbledore nodded gently. Looking at Snape who was lost in thought, Dumbledore suddenly asked, "Snape, no one from the pureblood family has contacted you recently?" Snape pondered for a moment and shook his head slowly. "No, there has been no contact recently." Then he couldn't help but asked, "Principal, are you saying that this matter is related to the Dark Lord?" Dumbledore did not answer, but asked an irrelevant question. "Has Lockhart behaved abnormally recently? You went to the auction with him yesterday, right?" "Yes, so what?" "Lockhart has been normal recently." Snape replied dissatisfiedly, "Principal, don't change the subject. Tell me, is the fiend fire related to the Dark Lord?" Facing Snape's question, Dumbledore sighed lightly and said slowly, "Bella is the Dark Lord's person and his most loyal subordinate. Do you know what I saw in her vault?" As he said that, without waiting for Snape to ask, he said regretfully, "The looted vault, the replica of the Hufflepuff Gold Cup, and this fiend fire. Obviously, this is definitely related to the Dark Lord." At this point, Dumbledore stopped answering, and Snape seemed to be thinking about something, full of confusion. Was this action the action of the Dark Lord, or was it an action against the Dark Lord? If it was the action of the Dark Lord, wouldn't it mean that the Dark Lord would take action recently? But this is not certain, because he has not received any relevant news. And if it was an action against the Dark Lord, then who, or which force, dared to attack the Dark Lord? After thinking for a while, Snape shook his head slightly. There was too little information to make an effective judgment. Principal, what do you think? Snape, who couldn't think of an answer, asked Dumbledore directly. Do you think it was done by the Dark Lord, or did it do something by other forces? I don't know either. Dumbledore hesitated, but I'm more inclined to believe that there are other forces targeting the Dark Lord. After all, these traps were completely triggered. If it was the Dark Lord's people, they shouldn't be so stupid. At the end, Dumbledore was also a little hesitant, because as far as he knew, there were quite a few idiots among the Death Eaters. Especially in the face of so much treasure, with their greed, it is not impossible for them to trigger the trap. However, after all, it is more likely that other forces did it. Other unknown forces? Snape muttered to himself. For some reason, Lockhart's figure suddenly appeared in his mind. A large amount of wealth, unknown magic materials, mysterious magic, a large number of potions, and house elves. If it is said that a mysterious force has it, it is more reasonable. Shaking his head slightly, Snape suppressed his suspicion in his heart, because he had no evidence to prove what he thought in his mind. And he and Lockhart cooperated so closely. When he thought of Lockhart's latest large orders and a large number of unknown magic materials, Snape did not investigate further. Just target the Dark Lord. He wished that the Dark Lord would be besieged by all wizards. Although he was on Dumbledore's side, he was just cooperating, not his servant. Afterwards, Snape chatted with Dumbledore for a few words and said goodbye. Dumbledore looked at Snape's leaving figure, then retracted his gaze and rubbed his temple in some distress. The reason why he mentioned Lockhart just now was because the goblin provided him with a piece of information. That is, Lockhart took all the treasures in his vault on the day when the fiend fire burned. This was too coincidental. That's why he asked Snape if Lockhart went to the auction with him. If it was because he needed to spend a lot of gold galleons to attend the auction, this reason was also reasonable. Wednesday night, defense against the dark arts office. Click. With a slight sound of the door opening, Harry walked out of the office and walked briskly towards the Gryffindor common room. When he came to Lockhart's office on Sunday, Harry was in a state of uneasiness. However, as he walked out of the office, his attitude suddenly changed after a conversation with Professor Lockhart. He has been thinking about how to translate the evil language of Parseltongue these days, and he even thought he was making a contribution to the entire wizarding world. When Harry thought of Professor Lockhart saying that he would write a research paper on Parseltongue in a while, and his name would be written on the paper, and it would be published in the top journals in the wizarding world, he felt very excited. Suddenly, meow. Harry, who had just walked to the stairs, suddenly found a small figure. He looked closely and found that it was Filch's pet cat, Mrs. Norris. Students over there, stop. Along with the cat's meow, a figure holding an oil lamp suddenly appeared. Filch, this is my application slip. I just went to Professor Lockhart's office. Harry raised the slip in his hand with some pride. He had heard Ron say that Filch liked to catch little wizards who wandered at night and punish them by making them clean trophies and floors. However, this time, he was not wandering at night. To be precise, with the slip in his hand, Filch had no reason to catch him. Seeing the slip in Harry's hand, Filch dragged out a long tone with some regret. Let's go. Go back to the common room quickly, and don't give me a chance to catch you in the future. Filch said viciously. Harry obviously didn't care about Filch's attitude. But when he thought of Professor Lockhart's instructions, Harry thought for a moment, and said to Filch in front of him. Filch, Professor Lockhart just said that if I meet you, I want you to go find him. Because Professor Lockhart said that he has an experiment, and if it succeeds, it may allow you to gain certain magical abilities. Chapter 132. Hey, I got it. I got magic. Lockhart's office. At this moment, Lockhart was sitting in front of the table, looking at the dark green book in front of him that was emitting a lot of magical fluctuations, with a faint smile on his face. On the cover of the book, two emerald green pythons kept swimming on the cover, sometimes separated, sometimes intertwined, forming a strange beauty. In the middle of the cover, there was a group of conspicuous words written, The Parseltongue Collection. This book was a magic item specially made by Lockhart. After he communicated with Harry about Parseltongue last time, He had an idea, and he made it while he was free these few days. The biggest function of this book magic item is to record the pronunciation of Parseltongue. At the same time, as long as the magic power is activated, one can release one's meaning through Parseltongue to achieve the purpose of controlling snake-like magical creatures. It's very simple and quite convenient. Just now, he and Harry studied Parseltongue together and tested it, and found that the effect was good. This naturally made him feel a little excited. He didn't forget that Hogwarts has a Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets. There is a basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets, and the lethality of the basilisk is not weak. If he can control this basilisk, there is no doubt that he will have a strong fighting force. After studying the Parseltongue, Lockhart gave Harry some new magic, based on runes according to the original plan. He decided to try his best to train Harry to be the representative of the new magic system in the future. With Harry's reputation as the savior, he will definitely be able to resolve many problems. Moreover, he didn't believe that Dumbledore could stand on the opposite side when Harry Potter stood on his side. This was the person he valued most. Although it was a bit like kidnapping, he felt that Dumbledore was still very useful, since he agreed to join his research. Well, Lockhart believed that Dumbledore, who was originally hesitant, decided to join the research of the new magic system, which was not unrelated to Harry. So he was ready to work harder and tie Dumbledore to his carriage completely. Suddenly, bang bang bang. Professor Lockhart, this is Filch. I just heard from Harry Potter that you were looking for me. With a knock on the door, Filch's hoarse and trembling voice came into Lockhart's ears. Huh? Lockhart exclaimed. So soon? He just casually gave Harry a small task, and the most important thing was to promote the magic of the new magic system to him, lowering the learning threshold and allowing squibs to master magic. Take this opportunity to attract Harry to indulge in the new magic system. He originally expected to go to Filch in person, but he didn't expect that he would come to the door himself. Thinking about it, Lockhart replied gently, "Come in, Filch. The door is not locked." Click. The door of the office opened, and a somewhat hunched figure appeared in front of Lockhart. He was holding a brown cat in his arms, Mrs. Norris, and holding an oil lamp in his hand. Just after coming in, Filch's voice trembled, and he said excitedly, "Professor Lockhart, is that true? I just heard Harry Potter say that you can help me master magic." Looking at Filch's somewhat old face, Lockhart's eyes flashed with a trace of pity, but he still nodded gently and said, "Of course, Filch, as long as the experiment is successful, you can master certain magical abilities. In fact, Filch is a little too old and is not a good experimental subject. But since everyone is here, he doesn't mind. It just so happens that according to his later plan, there will be a group of young people, even younger squibs, participating in the experiment. Filch can be used as a control. Help him obtain comparative data on the efficiency of meditation practice between young people and middle-aged and elderly people." Hearing Professor Lockhart's affirmative tone, Filch was excited and put down Mrs. Norris in his hand. He quickly ran to Lockhart, held Lockhart's hand, and said excitedly and quickly, "Professor, what do you need me to do? Tell me. As long as I can master magic, I can do anything." Sure. Feeling the heat in Filch's hand, Lockhart quickly pulled his hand out and said, "Don't worry, Principal Dumbledore will also participate in this experiment, and the probability of success is not low." Hearing what Lockhart said, Filch was so excited that he trembled a little. If Principal Dumbledore also participated, then this experiment would be a sure thing. Doesn't it mean that he will become a real wizard in the future and can have his own wand and cast spells? At this moment, Filch, who had been seeking magic for many years without success, was so excited that he almost shed tears. Looking at Filch's excited expression, Lockhart expressed his understanding. This feeling of seeking for many years without success and suddenly having a dream come true is enough to make people excited and crazy. In his previous life, one of the most classic cases was Fangin's success in the Imperial examination. He believed that when Filch truly mastered magic, it would be easy for him to enter the state of Fangin's success in the Imperial examination. "Hey, I got it. I got magic." Lockhart's mind suddenly flashed with the scene of Filch clapping his hands and laughing and talking nonsense, and he almost laughed out loud. As his thoughts turned, Lockhart gathered his thoughts and looked at Filch, who was excited, and said in a deep voice, "Filch, take a deep breath and calm down first. After you calm down, let's talk about the specific details." Hearing what Lockhart said, Filch took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. After a while, Lockhart looked at Filch, whose complexion had returned to normal, and said in a deep voice, "Filch, there is one thing I need to explain to you in advance about this magic experiment. Although Principal Dumbledore has joined, it is not ruled out that there will be danger to life or mental disorder. Of course, we will try our best to keep you safe." In response, Filch nodded and said firmly, "I understand, Professor. As long as I can master magic, I don't mind even if I die." Looking at Filch's resolute expression, Lockhart nodded gently. He felt that with Filch's determination and his resources, the probability of success might not be low. Then, Lockhart waved his wand, and a piece of parchment floated towards him, and floated in front of Filch. "Filch, the rune pattern on the parchment is very important." Lockhart pointed at the complex, slowly moving rune pattern on the parchment with his wand, and said lightly, "What you need to do is very simple. Imprint the pattern deeply in your mind, and then follow its trajectory and speed, and constantly visualize it in your mind. This process is called meditation. For this, you need to give us feedback on the effect of meditation, and where there are problems every day." Chapter 133 9-Element Meditation Method, Dumbledore's Curiosity. Hogwarts, Filch's hut. As the gatekeeper of Hogwarts, Filch has his own hut, which can also be called an office. At this moment, Filch placed 3 oil lamps on different positions on the table, which illuminated the area around the desk. And he himself, breathing rapidly, looked at the parchment on the table, especially the slowly changing patterns on the parchment. His eyes were full of fiery eyes. Magic, magic, I finally have the opportunity to truly master magic. While watching the patterns, Filch recalled his first half of his life. As soon as the salary was issued every month, he was reluctant to spend it. As long as he saved a certain amount of gold galleons, he would go outside to sign up for a spell class. From young to now, he has signed up for 1 or 2 almost every year. But there is a lot of spell knowledge in his mind, but he can't cast a spell. In his heart, there is only increasing despair, especially watching those first-year wizards, who are only 11 years old, wantonly fiddling with their wands and casting magic. His heart is full of jealousy. He is now in his 40s or 50s. He has to mop the floor with his hands, step by step. For a wizard, it takes him an hour or even longer to cast a spell for 1 minute. When Filch thought of this, he was filled with sadness, despair, and complaints. He complained about himself, his parents, his family, and God. Why? He was exposed to magic since he was a child, but he had no talent for it. Every day, he saw a large number of wizards growing up year after year, and learning more magic day after day. But he could only recall the magic knowledge in his mind late at night, repeatedly shout out spells, and wave the wand he bought with his salary. Even if his mouth was dry or his arms were sore, Filch didn't care. As long as his efforts could make a leaf fly, Filch would feel very satisfied. Unfortunately, all his efforts were like air, invisible and intangible. The more he thought about it, the hotter Filch looked at the parchment. Recalling what Professor Lockhart had said not long ago, Filch tapped the upper right corner of the parchment gently. Snap. The fingertips touched the parchment, making a slight sound. Then, the rune pattern that had been constantly emerging on the parchment stopped moving. Snap. Filch tapped again, and the originally complex rune pattern on the parchment began to split into 9 runes. Then, Filch gently touched one of the runes with his fingertips. The rest of the runes on the parchment suddenly disappeared, and the rune pattern that was touched expanded rapidly. In his field of vision, this pattern quickly filled the entire parchment. Seeing this, Filch took out a piece of white paper and began to copy and outline it stroke by stroke. For each stroke, Filch would look at the structure of the entire rune and imprint it deeply in his mind. According to Lockhart's advice, he needed to memorize the 9 runes and merge them together. At the beginning, it was direct copying. When you can copy a complete rune without copying the parchment, it represents initial success. Later, it was the same, and all 9 runes were memorized. After memorizing them, he outlined each rune pattern in his mind and visualized it according to the movement trajectory of the parchment. The next day, in a classroom at Hogwarts. Principle: the 9-element meditation method I studied is composed of 9 runes. As he said, Lockhart waved his wand, and 9 runes of different shapes appeared in the air. Lockhart introduced the meanings behind them are spirit, soul, and resonance. After that, Lockhart waved his wand, and the 9 runes in the air began to move around a strange trajectory, forming a strange swimming pattern. When the 9 runes are combined, long-term visualization can effectively enhance the wizard's mental power. The most important thing is that it can transform the mental power to a certain extent, so that your mental power can resonate with the magic power in the air, thereby reducing the consumption of casting spells. Dumbledore sat at a table, watching Lockhart in front of him introduce it eloquently, waving his wand wantonly, and ticking one pattern after another. He looked dazed, as if he saw a friend from many years ago appearing in front of him again, explaining his ideas, and inviting him to join again. He shook his head slightly, and his mind returned to reality, thinking about the ideas revealed in Lockhart's words. Principle: is there anything you don't understand? Looking at Dumbledore, who seemed to be thinking, Lockhart asked directly. Not yet. Dumbledore hesitated for a moment, as if thinking, and then replied affirmatively. Hearing the headmaster's affirmative answer, Lockhart thought for a moment and said, "Headmaster, I mentioned just now about the transformation of mental power, which is the core of the entire meditation method. What do you think? Let's discuss it together." Hearing Lockhart's question, Dumbledore thought for a moment and said gently, "Based on my years of experience, it is discovered that the nature of mental power itself will change in the process of our continuous casting of spells. For example, a wizard who often casts black magic will become a little impatient and violent, and his mental power will be more aggressive. Therefore, the black magic he casts will be more powerful. I think, if your meditation method can transform the nature of a wizard's mental power, are there any side effects, or how should we get rid of the side effects and retain its essence?" Hearing Dumbledore's question, Lockhart thought for a moment and replied affirmatively. "Principal, I understand your question. Meditation method will affect people's personality while transforming their mental power. According to my research, meditation methods of different natures have different speeds of transforming people's mental nature and will also have different degrees of influence on people's personality. The 9-element meditation method I proposed is the most basic meditation method. It is the most peaceful in transforming people's mental power, but at the same time, the speed of improving mental power is also relatively slow. But its threshold for mastering is also the lowest. Even a muggle can master it after deliberate practice to slowly improve his mental power. Muggles? Dumbledore muttered to himself after hearing Lockhart's last sentence, and then asked, "Is this helpful for muggles as well?" "Yes, Headmaster." Lockhart replied affirmatively, and then asked with some regret, "Unfortunately, ordinary muggles do not have magical blood, and cannot sense magic, or energy particles, at all. Therefore, they can only strengthen their mental power, but cannot transform the nature of their mental power. When they meditate, at most they find that they are becoming more and more energetic. Energy particles." Dumbledore asked with interest at the new term proposed by Lockhart. "Why do you name magic like this?" Lockhart explained Dumbledore's question without hesitation. "I have learned about the Muggle world in depth before. Scientists in the Muggle world have proposed the particle hypothesis. After learning about it, I found that the particles they mentioned are somewhat similar to our magic power. Moreover, I think that, if we regard magic power as particles full of magic element, we can more clearly explain the process of mental transformation through meditation." As he spoke, Lockhart waved his wand and drew a pattern in the air. A pure white beam of light continuously absorbed energy particles of various colors around it, and then changed its own color. Lockhart explained lightly, "This is what I think is the process of mental transformation. When we use meditation to continuously absorb specific energy particles, we can improve our own magic accumulation and mental resonance, and reduce magic consumption." However, Dumbledore's attention was obviously not here. He was full of exploration of what Lockhart had just mentioned, to delve into the Muggle world. The more he came into contact with this student of his, the more he found that he could not understand it. He remembered that Lockhart's attitude towards muggles before seemed to be like most wizards, full of contempt. Now he heard from him about going deep into the muggle world and understanding the knowledge of muggle scientists. He had to make a lot of associations. A person's change is never without a source. Chapter 134 Communication between two Riddlers. Principle: the transformation of the nature of mental power by meditation is different from the transformation of mental power by wizard blood. One is biased, and the other is more comprehensive. Lockhart: regarding meditation, I think visualizing rune patterns is one aspect, and we should also consciously adjust our mental frequency so that we can further improve the efficiency of mental power. Lockhart: you mentioned that some runes have a certain impact on wizard blood. I studied it. If we add these two runes, we can completely minimize the impact. After Lockhart finished explaining the meditation method, he began to discuss and study it further with Principal Dumbledore. At the beginning, the two could still discuss with each other, but in the later stage, Dumbledore's terrifying knowledge level began to show in front of Lockhart. Faced with some of Lockhart's questions, Dumbledore thought a little and gave corresponding solutions. In this way, Lockhart was very fortunate to bring in a complete version of Dumbledore, which was the right thing to do. You know, Kamar-Taj's meditation method is indeed very complete, but it is almost impossible to achieve the same effect in the Harry Potter world. One of the most significant differences is that one relies on the power of Vishanti, while the other relies on the power of his own bloodline, which is a big difference in itself. Not to mention a different world environment. Therefore, Lockhart has been studying how to modify the meditation method to make it more suitable for wizards in the Harry Potter world. A lot of problems were encountered in the middle, some of which could be solved, but some formed guard points. After discussing with Dumbledore, click, 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 all these guard points were solved. It can be said that the more Lockhart talked, the more excited he became, and the more he talked, the more he admired Dumbledore's knowledge. As expected of the White Lord who defeated 2 generations of Dark Lords and owns the library of Hogwarts, this level is really not exaggerated. Suddenly Lockhart: when the squibs master the meditation method, how long do you think it will take them to cast their first spell? In response to Dumbledore's question, Lockhart answered without hesitation, Principal, this still depends on talent. Because meditation is more about mental talent, not blood. According to my rough calculation, if the mental talent is good, after a week of hard training, you can cast the first spell. If potions are provided, the time can be further shortened. But for squibs with poor talent, it's hard to say. It's okay if they are a little diligent. It will take about 3 or 4 months to see results. If they are lazy in the middle, it will take longer. I see. Dumbledore asked thoughtfully, so, after hard training, a squib can become a wizard in at most half a year, although it only has the ability to cast simple spells. Yes, Principal, because the squibs themselves have a certain magical bloodline. Lockhart nodded and said, although the bloodline is weak, it is enough for them to complete the initial accumulation of magic power and the transformation of the nature of mental power, so that they have a certain ability to cast spells. Hearing this, Dumbledore narrowed his eyes and jokingly said, it seems that in the future Hogwarts should relax the admission conditions and recruit some squibs with good mental talents. At this point, Lockhart also smiled and affirmed, Principal, this is a good idea. Perhaps in the future Hogwarts will produce more wizard geniuses who are born as squibs. Hearing this, Dumbledore seemed to sigh and said, however, this encounters a difficult problem. Wizards born as squibs will never be assigned to Slytherin College. After all, Slytherin College has certain requirements for bloodline, and most of them are pure blood. Lockhart understood what Dumbledore meant when he heard this. So, after thinking for a moment, he said meaningfully, we are all in the same school, and studying under the same professor. You don't have to mix with purebloods, just be yourself. After all, they are in different circles, so why force yourself to integrate? Hearing Lockhart's answer, Dumbledore nodded and praised, you are right, Lockhart. It is difficult to integrate into different circles. Even if you force yourself to integrate, you will most likely end up with a bloody nose. Then, Dumbledore changed the subject, and said as if hinting, however, purebloods are different from ordinary wizards. Their sense of competition is very strong, and when they encounter danger, they usually come together to deal with it together. I believe you are aware of this. Lockhart understood what Dumbledore meant and replied directly, "Principal, there is definitely cohesion. But whether it is strong or not is debatable. After all, the leader is gone. Doesn't everyone have to find their own way out?" Hearing Lockhart's last almost straightforward answer, Dumbledore was silent for a while. He just told Lockhart that, if he wanted to promote his own magic system, he must first solve the obstruction of the pureblood families. Using the example of Hogwarts admission, he told the purebloods about their attitude towards the squibs. Putting aside the so-called resource occupation, the purebloods will never allow the squibs to have the opportunity to run over them. Moreover, they have always been proud of their bloodline, and now a magic system that does not rely on bloodline has popped up. Doesn't it mean that they are just like the mudlegs they looked down on before, and their sacredness, power, status, etc. will be affected? Dumbledore knows the mentality of the pureblood families very well. As long as he finds problems with the new magic system, he will definitely take action directly. As for Lockhart's answer, Dumbledore also understands some of his plans. It is nothing more than splitting the pureblood families, pulling one faction and beating another, and in this process, promoting the magic system. After all, there is no leading figure among the pureblood families now, and it is impossible to fully gather the power of all the pureblood families. Even the struggle between the pureblood families is still very fierce. For some families, the contradictions are so sharp that they are just a matter of life and death, holding wands and fighting hard. Despite this, he still didn't think highly of Lockhart, because the enemies he faced were not only pureblood families, but also. Lockhart looked at Dumbledore's silence, sighed softly, and knew his hesitation. In fact, during this period of time, he had never concealed his purpose, which was to ask Dumbledore to add a new magic system to promote it. He understood what people like Dumbledore would consider. He didn't say how much help the new magic system would be to Dumbledore himself. After all, with the other party's status, pure interests could not be tempted at all. Therefore, he always emphasized how the new magic system would benefit the future of the wizarding world. This is more convincing for a white devil like Dumbledore who has the world in his heart. In the exchange just now, both parties tacitly did not go straight to the point. Otherwise, once rejected, it would be easy to enter an irreversible point. Despite this, the two basically said what they should say, and Dumbledore's attitude was neither a clear agreement nor a direct refusal. After thinking about it, Lockhart still wanted to test it again. "Principal, I will go back and organize the paper on meditation. Do you want me to add your name to it? After all, you helped solve many of the difficult problems. Thanks to Moses How for the 100-point reward. Thanks to Lu Shang for playing the piano. Your grandpa Long is here. Big Hairy Monster 011. The Illusion of Tears. Fanlin. Shangzi. The Heaven-Defying Demon Dragon. Book Friend. 2019102120235180. Siglesy, Reader 125003879720706048. 9,832,128. Little Cheese from the Matcha family. I'll block you. Gust of Wind level 13. There are things Holy Light will never tell you. And the monthly vote from Bored Dragonite. Chapter 135. My heart and my actions are as clear as a mirror, and everything I do is just. Seeing Lockhart's expectant eyes, Dumbledore sighed. In his eyes, what Lockhart did might be an opportunity for wizards, but it might also be a disaster. If he was young, he might not have joined it, but now he is older and has seen too many bloody storms. The more he sees, the more he likes the peaceful time. And there are a group of students and professors below. Any slight action of his will have an impact on them, especially Tom. When Dumbledore thought of this, he felt a headache. Last semester, Tom possessed Quirrell and entered Hogwarts, causing quite a stir. And this semester, when he saw the large number of Hufflepuff Gold Cup replicas in Bella's vault, he immediately had a bad association in his heart. The top magic items left by the 4 founders of Hogwarts, the Sword of Gryffindor, was in his hand. The other 3 were all lost, and no trace was found. It is hard to say that this has nothing to do with Tom. Dumbledore felt a headache when he thought of the effects of the 3 top magic items recorded in Hogwarts. However, Lockhart couldn't do nothing, otherwise he would go astray and get into trouble. After thinking for a while, Dumbledore was silent for a while, and then slowly said, "Don't sign my name on the paper for the time being." Hearing this, Lockhart's eyes were a little disappointed. Then he heard, "However, you can mention me in the content of the paper." Hearing this, Lockhart was refreshed. Although he didn't achieve the expected results, he is in a good state now. In the reply just now, Dumbledore didn't explicitly say that he would support him, but his name was in the paper, which would have some influence more or less. At least his paper wouldn't be so easily defeated, and it might even rise 1 or 2 levels. After all, Dumbledore's status and influence are not just talk. Moreover, the most important point is that Dumbledore is now considered to have joined his magic research, which is a good start. Later, he didn't forget what Dumbledore's lifelong pain was. If he could help him solve this difficulty and get his full support, it might not be impossible. The thought flashed through his mind, and a faint smile floated on Lockhart's face. Dumbledore saw the change in Lockhart's expression, but did not say anything, just continued to chat gently. "Lockhart, the meditation method is indeed an extremely genius idea. However, how many types have you researched now?" At this point, Dumbledore smiled and said, "When I listened to your explanation just now, I mentioned your various experiments in meditation methods. Principal, I have a lot of meditation methods here, but more or less they all have some side effects." In response to Dumbledore's question, Lockhart thought for a while and replied, "The 9-element meditation method is a meditation method that I have verified. Although it is the most basic, it is indeed the most peaceful and has almost no side effects. It is suitable for all wizards and all squibs. Therefore, regarding the thesis, I also want to use the 9-element meditation method as an example to explain it. Principal, what do you think?" "Lockhart, your idea is good. After all, safety comes first." Dumbledore thought for a while and nodded in praise. Dumbledore's praise naturally made Lockhart smile. Well, he was indeed going to promote the 9-element meditation method first. After all, it had the widest range of uses. As for other more advanced meditation methods, he also had quite a few, and the improvement effect was far higher than the 9-element meditation method. As for the so-called side effects, there were more or less, but the impact was not great. These were what he was going to use for his own people. Otherwise, how could he attract his followers and build his own power? Relying on guild galleons alone would not last long, and the meditation method and the supporting new magic system were his trump cards. It was also the foundation of a wizard's power. Then Lockhart, is there anything else I can help you with? Dumbledore touched his beard and asked kindly. I think I, an old man, am still somewhat useful. Lockhart pondered Dumbledore's question for a moment, and then slowly said, Principal, there is one thing that really needs your support. I told you before that I asked Filch to conduct experiments on the squibs regarding the real effect of meditation. However, I'm afraid that we can't get the accurate effect of meditation just by relying on Filch alone. If possible, I hope to recruit a group of squibs in the name of Hogwarts to help them practice meditation and get accurate experimental data. Dumbledore hesitated when he heard Lockhart's request. He still understood Lockhart's purpose very well. He still wanted Hogwarts to endorse him and recruit squibs in the name of Hogwarts to conduct meditation experiments. Not only would there be no problems in the future, but he could also easily recruit a large number of high-quality squibs. Dumbledore even thought of a deeper level. Maybe even squibs from pure-blood families could be recruited, which would make it easier for him to carry out the so-called split plan. So, he decided, okay, there is no problem with this, Lockhart. Dumbledore hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Even if he didn't let Lockhart recruit squibs for experiments in the name of Hogwarts, but Lockhart could still conduct experiments with his own strength. Instead of doing this, it would be better to put it under his own eyes, so that he could guide and control it better. Moreover, he had just heard about the 9-element meditation method, which was indeed very peaceful as Lockhart said, with almost no side effects, so he was not particularly worried. Hearing the promise of Principal Dumbledore, Lockhart showed a happy smile on his face. The most critical step was finally taken. On the surface, it was recruiting squibs for experiments in the name of Hogwarts. But in fact, it was the initial promotion in the name of experiments. Hogwarts, but it enjoys a high reputation in the entire wizarding world. As long as the wind is spread, it can easily recruit a lot of high-ranking squibs. You know, many pure-blood families, alchemy masters, and potion masters cannot have relatives who are all wizards. There are more or less squibs. According to the usual means of recruiting, they can't be attracted at all. But it's different in the name of Hogwarts, especially when the news of his cooperation with Dumbledore is accidentally leaked. Lockhart is sure that these people will come here to practice meditation. And with these people, he can form the prototype of his own power with just a little screening. Even if their status is critical enough, they can influence the attitude of their relatives. As for Dumbledore's thoughts, Lockhart can more or less guess it. But he doesn't care. He thinks he is completely on the side of justice, fighting against those stubborn, corrupt and backward forces. As the saying goes, my heart and my actions are as clear as a mirror, and everything I do is justice. Suddenly an inspiration came up, which will make the plot of the novel more exciting. But there is a small conflict with the previous plot, so 129 chapters have been refined. Welcome to watch it again. I'm very sorry, I will try to think more comprehensively next time. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136 Harry Potter is stabbed and threatened. Hogwarts, cafeteria. Harry, several professors have been praising you recently. How did you do it? Ron took a bite of the chicken leg beside him and asked exaggeratedly, his tone full of envy. Yes, Harry, I heard from Ron that you have been out for a night stroll several times recently. Are you doing something? Hermione, who was sitting next to him, also asked with suspicion. She noticed that Harry's learning state has improved significantly in recent times. Especially in the potion class, Snape was watching him, and Harry could actually make potions, as if nothing had happened. You know, as long as Snape was standing next to him, the pressure on the little wizard was quite strong, and she couldn't stand it. Before, Harry basically failed every time he encountered it. But recently, he changed his usual behavior, and successfully made potions under the gaze of Snape, the big bat. It couldn't help but cause Hermione's surprise and curiosity. Especially, the last time she saw Harry coming back from Lockhart's office, he was wearing a silver bracelet, and she had some guesses in her mind. Hearing the questions of his two good friends, especially Ron's envious tone, Harry subconsciously touched the silver bracelet on his wrist, with a bright smile on his face. The bracelet given by Professor Lockhart is still amazing. As long as a certain amount of magic power is injected every day, he can study in a more focused state, and not easily distracted. The feeling that he can comprehend magic knowledge every moment brought him great pleasure. He found that he actually liked reading and studying. Well, he wanted to be a top student like Hermione, add points to Gryffindor every day, and get praise from professors. Thanks to Professor Lockhart, with this bracelet in his hand, he is not afraid of Snape. When Snape, the big bat, stood next to him, he only needed to inject a lot of magic power and enter a relatively calm state. He could completely ignore his gaze. Every time he successfully made a potion and saw Snape's eyes, he felt extremely satisfied. Haha, this big bat has today too. Ron saw Harry touching the bracelet on his wrist, and he said in a flattering way, Harry, let me see your bracelet. Well, as Harry's best friend who has the most contact with him, he also has his own doubts. Especially in the past few days, he heard Harry constantly praising Professor Lockhart, and he had some guesses in his heart. Is this bracelet given to you by Professor Lockhart? Let me see, let me see. Hearing Ron's pleading tone, Harry hesitated a little. He really treasured his bracelet, and he couldn't let it go every day, even when he went to bed. But with Hermione joining in, Harry said hesitantly, Ron, Hermione, this is indeed given to me by Professor Lockhart. But you can only take a look. As he said, Harry reluctantly took off his bracelet and put it on the table. Then he kept staring at it, as if he was afraid of losing it. Seeing Harry's attitude, Ron muttered stingy in a low voice. He took it directly in his hand, felt the cool touch brought by the bracelet, put it in front of his eyes, and carefully observed the row of runes engraved on the edge of the bracelet. But he said, "I can't understand any of them." Then he poured a little magic power into the bracelet. Instantly, a cool feeling rose in his mind, and the joy and curiosity in his heart suddenly weakened a lot. In the eyes of Harry and Hermione, Ron's expression changed suddenly. Originally grinning, he suddenly restrained his smile and looked at the silver bracelet in front of him calmly. However, soon, as the magic power in the bracelet disappeared, Ron returned to normal. If an outsider saw it, the whole process seemed inexplicably weird. "Wow, Harry, what a powerful magic item." Ron, who had just returned to normal, made a surprised voice. "I wanted to." Just now, under the blessing of the bracelet, he suddenly had an illusion of omnipotence. Hermione, who was next to him, saw Ron's performance and said eagerly, "I'll try it too." As she said that, she took it from Ron's hand without waiting for Ron's reply. Like Ron, she poured a lot of magic power directly. In the eyes of Ron and Harry, Hermione was originally full of curiosity and eagerness. Suddenly she became calm and natural. If you take away her fluffy brown hair, she would look like a lady. This time, because Hermione directly infused a lot of magic power, she entered a relatively calm state. She calmly observed the runes on the bracelet and found that she didn't recognize them. She turned her head and asked Harry, "Harry, how did you get Professor Lockhart to reward you with this bracelet?" "I feel its effect. It makes us more focused and calm, which is very suitable for study and research. I want one too. I feel great now." As she said that, the corners of Hermione's mouth curled up, like a lady, revealing a faint smile. Seeing the completely different Hermione, Harry naturally knew that the bracelet worked, but he didn't care. Professor Lockhart said that this state should not be too frequent. Once the number of times is too many, it is easy to have certain side effects. Hermione is just using it for the first time, so it doesn't affect her. However, facing Hermione's question, Harry thought about it and said with a hint of excitement in his tone, "This is the research project I joined Professor Lockhart, and the professor rewarded me." "What project did you join?" Hermione asked calmly. After thinking about Lockhart, he felt that this was not a big deal, so he said directly, "Professor Lockhart wants to study how to let ordinary wizards use Parseltongue. Let me help with the research." "Oh, so you are being studied." Hermione's brief and calm heart-piercing evaluation instantly brought Harry's excited expression to the bottom. Harry muttered in a low voice, "It can't be said to be studied, Professor Lockhart. Let me translate in Parseltongue from the dictionary. This is not considered being studied, and the professor also said that I have to write a paper in a while, and I have to add my name to it." Hearing this, Hermione calmly said again, "Oh, as an experimental subject?" "Hermione." Harry said a little dissatisfied, and took the bracelet directly from Hermione's hand. Hermione, who lost the bracelet, suddenly returned to normal, and hurriedly chirped, her tone full of excitement, Harry, this bracelet is amazing. I want one too. I want it too." Ron next to him also said with envy. After Harry carefully put the bracelet on his wrist, he said proudly, "This is Professor Lockhart's reward for my contribution. Ordinary people can't get it." Hearing this, Hermione asked thoughtfully, "Harry, do you know what other research Professor Lockhart has done? Let's see if we can help." Hearing this, Harry hesitated a little, as if he did know one. Ron saw Harry's expression, and felt that there was a chance, so he hurriedly urged, "Harry, there is only one bracelet. If we can help, maybe we can get the bracelet too. Then, we won't have to take your bracelet anymore." At the end, Ron's tone seemed to reveal a hint of threat. Hermione, who was next to him, nodded quickly after hearing this, looking at Harry expectantly. Seeing the expressions of his two good friends, Harry looked at the magic bracelet on his wrist again. He felt that, if he didn't tell them, the bracelet might really leave him from time to time. He was a little helpless, and then he said as if recalling, "I remember that Professor Lockhart has been researching some kind of meditation method recently. He told me that, if this research is successful, the squibs will master certain spellcasting abilities, which will definitely shock the entire wizarding world, and may even earn them the Order of Merlin, first class." He mentioned before that, if he meets Filch, he can ask him to experiment with the effects of meditation. He also mentioned that he will find some young wizards to experiment with later. If you want to join, you can ask Professor Lockhart. Chapter 137 Cunning Goo-Goo. Hogwarts. Lockhart's office. Cuckoo, you should lose weight. Lockhart picked up the bullbird Cuckoo with disdain. Looking at Cuckoo's round belly and its weight, he said speechlessly, "Look at how thin you were before, but you ate a lot recently. Your weight has increased by at least 50%. Cuckoo. Cuckoo said complainingly, as if it was not his fault. Cuckoo, what does this have to do with Hagrid? You run to him every day to eat and drink, and you blame Hagrid. Hearing Cuckoo's rebuttal, Lockhart was even more speechless. This guy actually blamed Hagrid for giving him too delicious food. It was not its fault. Well, Lockhart did not have too many restrictions on Cuckoo, except for the regular training every night. Basically, it was a free-range attitude, and Cuckoo certainly felt very free. Flying around Hogwarts every day, from time to time, acting cute in front of girls, and asking for snacks. With its extraordinary intuition, it knew very well what kind of state girls liked. Therefore, it was easy for it to make the girls happy, and get a lot of delicious snacks. When it was time for dinner, it was even more cunning, and went directly to Hagrid to get some food and drinks. Because it knew that the food provided by Lockhart, the breeder, was good, but it was only a small portion, so it could only eat half full. Hagrid, on the other hand, could get as much as he wanted, and the quality of the food was no worse than Lockhart's. In fact, the food provided by Lockhart came from Hagrid. When Lockhart knew about it, he felt helpless. What kind of behavior is this? This is called not letting the middlemen make a profit, and going directly to the manufacturer to eat for free. The original Goo-Goo looked quite cute, but it gained weight. It's not that it's not cute, but he always felt a little awkward. To be precise, it was less cute. When Lockhart thought of carrying a fat version of Goo-Goo on his shoulder, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. He made up his mind to help Goo-Goo lose weight and help it recover a healthy body. Goo-Goo. The moment Lockhart made up his mind, Goo-Goo's keen intuition took effect. She immediately sensed the breeder's ill intentions and shouted loudly, just as she was about to flap her wings. Then disrupt space. Seeing Goo-Goo's reaction, Lockhart cast a spell to prevent Goo-Goo from escaping. Goo-Goo. After flapping his wings a few times and finding that his ability to teleport had disappeared again, Goo-Goo shouted with some resentment, his face full of pity. It seemed that he wanted to change Lockhart's mind through this method. This trick seemed to work well for girls. Seeing this, Lockhart waved his wand and cast a transfiguration spell, turning a wooden box on the desk into a small treadmill. Goo-Goo, for the first time, let's hold on for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, you can rest for a while, Lockhart said to Goo-Goo like coaxing a child. Goo-Goo. Goo-Goo looked at the small treadmill opposite, especially the dark, slow-moving wide black belt. Seeing this, Goo-Goo's eyes were full of panic, and he began to frantically flap his wings again. Lockhart sighed softly, waved his wand, controlled Goo-Goo to fly onto the treadmill, and restricted it to move only on it. Goo-Goo. Snap. Goo-Goo, who had just stepped on the treadmill, was not used to it at all, and fell down all of a sudden, fell on the black belt, and slid backwards. Bang. Goo-Goo. Goo-Goo's head collided with the transparent wall formed by the spell, making a slight sound. Suddenly, Goo-Goo cried pitifully, hoping that the breeder would let him go. However, the black belt on the treadmill kept moving, and its head kept hitting the transparent wall formed by the spell. And the longer it lay, the more it felt squeezed. Goo-Goo. After feeling that his shouts were powerless, Goo-Goo decided to rely on himself. He tried to stand up and ran forward. The black belt of the treadmill was moving backwards, and the bull escape bird Goo-Goo began to run forward smoothly. Snap. 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 Lockhart heard the slapping sound of Goo-Goo's feet in the black belt, and nodded with satisfaction. However, I want to lose weight. He really needs to control his food intake, and not eat too much. He will contact Hagrid later. Even if Goo-Goo runs to him, he can't feed him too much food. After a while, Goo-Goo should lose weight. Thinking about it, Lockhart stopped paying attention to Goo-Goo who was running, sat at the desk, and started to correct homework. After 10 minutes, the spell will automatically be lifted, and Goo-Goo can rest. As for the next round of running, He will talk about it after he finishes correcting the homework. Time passed by minute, and the clacking sound of Gugu running on the treadmill continued, and the thick stack of homework in front of Lockhart began to decrease rapidly. After a long time, suddenly, bang bang bang. Professor, it's sus. With a knock on the door, Lockhart heard a familiar female voice coming from outside, and at the same time, sensed 3 breaths of life outside, and instantly understood the identity of the visitor. Come in, the door is not locked. Click. With the slight sound of the door opening, the 3 Gryffindors came in one after another. Professor, what's wrong with Gugu? Hermione just came in, and was about to ask about meditation. As a result, she saw Gugu, a ball drifting bird, lying on the desk with its chest constantly floating. She really likes to act cute, and she personally fed the cute Gugu a lot of snacks. Suddenly, she saw Gugu lying on the table, as if half dead, and her attention was diverted. Oh. Lockhart looked at Gugu and said lightly, it said it wanted to lose weight. It just ran for a while and is resting. Gugu, who was resting on the table, immediately cried out in dissatisfaction when he heard the breeder's words. What do you mean I want to lose weight? It's obviously you, the devil, who forced me to run. However, maybe it was too tired, or it was the first time running, so it cried out and lay on the table again. Oh, that's it. I didn't expect Gugu to be a bird that loves sports. Hermione nodded thoughtfully. Since Gugu likes sports, should she help? Professor, I want to ask you something about meditation. Can we join? Ron, who was standing next to her, didn't care about Hermione's thoughts. Seeing that she was slow to speak, he asked directly. Hearing Ron's question, Lockhart suddenly realized the purpose of the 3 Gryffindors coming. It was probably Harry who said that. Well, in fact, he talked to Harry about the meditation method, on the one hand, to attract him to join. On the other hand, he also wanted to spread the news of meditation through him. Look, Hermione and Ron came here on their own initiative. It's not his fault. They asked to learn meditation. As a professor who loves to teach and educate people, isn't it normal for him to answer questions and impart knowledge to his students? Besides, there is nothing wrong with the 9-element meditation method he teaches. He also emphasized this point when communicating with Dumbledore before. Otherwise, Dumbledore would not allow him to find someone to do the experiment. Ron, if you are willing, I can teach you meditation. Thinking about it, Lockhart nodded to Ron and replied. Ron was delighted to receive the professor's affirmative reply and asked quickly, then Professor, can we also get a magic bracelet like Harry's? Chapter 138, The Millennium Law Broken. Click. With the sound of the door closing, Hermione, Harry and the other 2 disappeared from Lockhart's sight. It was a pleasant surprise that the 3 little Gryffindors wanted to learn meditation. Of course, he would not refuse. As long as they practiced meditation, they would naturally enter the new magic system. This would undoubtedly be more beneficial to Lockhart's promotion plan. In his plan, he would select corresponding representatives from various groups to promote. There are squibs, wizards, purebloods, half-bloods, young people, and the elderly. In short, it is necessary to shape the cognition for the entire wizarding world in a short period of time. That is, meditation has a wide range of applications. As long as you want to learn, there will definitely be results. As for the magic bracelet they want, it is a small problem. Set a small goal for them, and they will get it naturally if they reach it. With his thoughts turning, Lockhart looked at Gugu, who had stood up and looked around. Waving his wand, a small treadmill appeared in front of the desk again. At the same time, a familiar voice came from Gugu's ear. Gugu, come on, let's hold out for 15 minutes this time. Gugu. Gugu made a desperate accusation. Diagon Alley, Daily Prophet. Cotton Becker, editor-in-chief of Daily Prophet, was looking at the draft to be sent out tomorrow at his desk. Cotton was a middle-aged wizard who was nearly 50 years old. He was slightly fat and plump. He wore a loose grey wizard robe and his hair was slightly sparse. At this moment, while looking at the draft, he did not forget to take a puff of the black pipe in his mouth. Inhale. Between inhalation and exhalation, wisps of smoke emanated from the top of the pipe. Suddenly, click. Cotton's office suddenly opened, and at the same time, a slightly excited voice came. Editor-in-Chief, big news, big news. Cotton looked helplessly at his capable editor and waved his hand, saying, Bobby, don't be impatient, take your time. What's the matter? Bobby Wenger, editor of the Daily Prophet, said excitedly, Hogwarts is recruiting research assistants. What research project? As the editor-in-chief, Cotton immediately grasped the key point and asked directly. Professor Lockhart of Hogwarts has found a way for squibs to have the ability to cast spells. It is said that Principal Dumbledore is also involved in it, and it is almost successful. Now we are waiting to recruit a group of squibs for the final test. What? Hearing the news that Bobby said, Editor-in-Chief Cotton showed a shocked expression on his face. Squibs cannot cast spells. This is a common sense and law recognized by the wizarding world for thousands of years. Unexpectedly, someone has broken it now. As for the authenticity of the news, he did not doubt it. The reputation of Hogwarts for thousands of years is unquestionable, not to mention that Dumbledore has joined. Although Bobby said it was supposedly, but the shrewd editor Cotton naturally knew that such rumors would not come from nowhere. Dumbledore was definitely involved, but he just didn't show up directly. Not to mention, this was published in the name of Hogwarts. Who would believe that Dumbledore didn't get involved? As for Professor Lockhart, he was familiar with him. He had cooperated with the Daily Prophet before. He was quite capable, but he was a bit vain. For such a person, it would be more reliable to say that Dumbledore did the research than to say that he did it himself. Maybe Lockhart was just a puppet pushed out by Dumbledore. If it was Dumbledore, then a lot of thoughts kept emerging in the mind of Editor Cotton, and his face was uncertain. He could become the editor-in-chief, so he naturally had the ability and vision. This was big news, but the amount of information behind it was enough to shock the entire wizarding world. This was the reason why he had been hesitating. Editor Bobby naturally didn't think as deeply as the editor-in-chief did. He just thought it was big news. After it was published, it would definitely cause a sensation, which would be very beneficial to the sales of the Daily Prophet. In his eyes, his editor-in-chief walked back and forth after hearing the news, as if he was making a decision. Although he was a little puzzled, he still waited silently beside him. After a while, the editor-in-chief Cotton said to Bolin, put this news on the front page, send it out the day after tomorrow, and it will be normal tomorrow. Ah, okay, editor-in-chief. Hearing the editor-in-chief's order, Bolin was stunned for a moment, but nodded quickly. Why should it be announced the day after tomorrow? He seemed to understand a little bit, but also a little bit confused. Wait until Editor Bolin left. Cotton waved his wand, and the feather pen, letter paper, and envelopes on the desk floated up. As Cotton's thoughts turned, he kept recording a lot of text. After a while, more than 10 envelopes appeared in front of him. Cotton rang the bell on the side of the desk, and soon more than 10 owls flew over. After a while, the owls flew around with these envelopes. After doing everything, Editor-in-Chief Cotton returned to his chair and exhaled lightly. He dared not offend Dumbledore. The Pureblood family was the financial backer of the Daily Prophet, and he would try not to offend them if he could. So he could only take this middle approach. He also knew that when the Daily Prophet announced the news, it would cause a huge wave. Malfoy family. Lucius Malfoy sat in front of the desk, and an unpacked envelope was placed next to the desk. In the middle was a letter from Cotton, the editor-in-chief of the Daily Prophet. At this moment, Lucius rubbed his temples in distress. This year was a bit magical for him. At the beginning of the year, the traces of his master, the Dark Lord, had begun to appear, which made him feel scared. Not long ago, Bella's vault was stolen, which made him tremble with fear. Bella had always been in the Dark Lord's power before, serving as a housekeeper. Her vault contained many of the Dark Lord's treasures. He could imagine how angry the Dark Lord would be when he knew that his treasures had been stolen. And the news he saw today made him feel whether he was dreaming. Hogwarts has successfully developed a method for squibs to perform magic. Once it is announced, it will inevitably affect the status of pureblood families like them. However, this may also be an opportunity for the pureblood families to rise, as long as the method is in the hands of the pureblood families. What are the benefits? When he thought of this, Lucius's breathing became a little rapid. With his mind turning, He immediately wrote 11 letters and handed them to the other 11 pureblood families on the board of directors. He believed that if the board of directors put all the pressure on them, they should achieve certain results. You know, although Dumbledore is the headmaster, the cost of running Hogwarts is shared by the families of the board members. Therefore, they also have a lot of influence in Hogwarts. P.S. When I woke up in the morning, I saw that the average subscription has stabilized at 1,200. Thank you for the support of all the readers. I will add more chapters today, and there will be 5 more chapters again. Thanks to Lim0727, Pig Shouts Elephant, Bookfriend 201811041854090021, Kevin 93, Yi Shengfei, Hua Jiangohu, Luz, GT loves his wife, Bookfriend 2022040721112474, Hare Clark, ZD.P for voting for the monthly ticket. Chapter 139 Lockhart, Can I Join the School Board? Hogwarts, the corridor on the 8th floor. Trample, trample, trample. With the sound of hurried footsteps, Professor McGonagall, wearing a dark green wizard robe, strode over, holding a thick stack of envelopes in her hand. Her steps revealed a little anxiety. Chocolate balls. The water drop stone beast statue opened with a bang, and Professor McGonagall walked in quickly. Soon, with a come in from inside, Professor McGonagall pushed open the door and saw Dumbledore writing a letter. Albus, Lockhart is recruiting research assistants in the name of Hogwarts. Why didn't you tell me about this? At this point, Professor McGonagall's face was obviously a little bad. As she spoke, she raised the thick stack of envelopes in her hand and said, I received so many letters last night, and including this morning, a large number of owls came to me. At the end, there was a clear complaint in her tone. Minerva, don't be anxious. Dumbledore wrote his name on the letter, looked up and said with a smile, I wanted to find time to tell you about this today. I didn't expect Lockhart to be so impatient. Not long after I agreed, he found the Daily Prophet. Hearing this, Professor McGonagall's face looked better, but still with a hint of worry, she said, Albus, are you sure there is no problem recruiting research assistants in the name of Hogwarts recruitment? The matter seems to be a little big. The board of directors has written to inquire, and their attitude is not good. At this point, Professor McGonagall asked curiously, Albus, is Lockhart's research true? Now he can make squibs have the ability to cast spells? Yes, Minerva. Dumbledore nodded gently and said, I also participated in Lockhart's research. Indeed, it can make squibs have the ability to cast spells. Hearing this, Professor McGonagall nodded and asked thoughtfully, then Albus, how much did you participate in this research? Some of my friends have written to me asking about this. Although they didn't write it explicitly, the implicit suggestion in their words is that they suspect Lockhart is a shield you have put up. Minerva, what do you think? Dumbledore did not respond to Professor McGonagall's question, but asked directly. Obviously, Professor McGonagall was a little hesitant. She thought for a moment before saying, if it was before Lockhart became a professor, perhaps I would have had similar ideas. After all, Lockhart did not have any results in magic research before. However, after communicating in recent times, it feels like he figured it out. Of course, I trust you more. You are definitely not the kind of person who seeks excuses. In response to Professor McGonagall's answer, Dumbledore said with a smile, indeed, this research was basically completed independently by Lockhart, and I was just making some repairs later. Hearing this, Professor McGonagall seemed to have thought of something. She raised the envelope in her hand and said, Albus, do you want to take a look at these letters? This is from the board of directors. They believe this is the result of Hogwarts research. They said the matter is of great importance and asked us to temporarily stop recruiting research assistants and not to publicly announce the news in the Daily Prophet. After everyone is present, we will discuss and make decisions together at the board of directors meeting. At the end, Professor McGonagall's tone was obviously full of disgust. She certainly understood the attitude of the school board. They just wanted to take the research results for themselves. Professor McGonagall certainly knew what kind of changes Lockhart's research would bring. If the pureblood families mastered it, I'm afraid that at that time, the squibs would not be able to master magic without becoming a member of the pureblood family. She was a half-blood wizard, and when she was young, she was despised and bullied by the pureblood families. Naturally, she knew what those pureblood families thought. Oh, so. In stark contrast to Professor McGonagall's attitude, Dumbledore's attitude remained gentle and unchanged, as if everything was expected. Then you can reply to them that this research has nothing to do with Hogwarts. It was developed by Lockhart alone. I want to emphasize that Professor Lockhart has only been at Hogwarts for a month. This research was the result of his work before he came to Hogwarts. Okay, Albus. Dumbledore's reply made Professor McGonagall's mouth curl up slightly. She had already imagined the pureblood family's faces showing a look of ashamed when they saw the reply. By the way, Minerva, please pass the letter from the board of directors to Lockhart for me. Dumbledore said gently. Let me ask you again, does Lockhart want to continue to apply for research assistance in the name of Hogwarts? If he wants to, don't stop him. Okay, Albus. Professor McGonagall replied hesitantly. Obviously, she understood what Dumbledore meant. Lockhart's office. Professor McGonagall, the headmaster really said so. Looking at Minerva McGonagall across from him, Lockhart asked. Yes, Lockhart. Professor McGonagall nodded gently. Lockhart looked at the envelope from the board of directors in front of him and fell into deep thought. Of course, he understood what Dumbledore meant. Now the problem is in front of him. It depends on how he chooses. If he chooses to face the challenge and continue to recruit research assistants in the name of Hogwarts, then it is equivalent to in-depth cooperation with Hogwarts. Later, the board of directors will definitely use this as an excuse to plunder his research results and even use it to destroy his reputation. He had seen, heard, and experienced this routine in his previous life. Naturally, he felt disgusted. But if he stopped recruiting research assistants in the name of Hogwarts, then the school board would have no excuse to stop him. After all, he had only been in school for a month. If this information was released, even a fool would know who the research results belonged to. So, he chose okay, Professor McGonagall, then continue to recruit in the name of Hogwarts. Lockhart replied decisively. Although there would be troubles in using the name of Hogwarts, the benefits were also great. The influence of Hogwarts can be said to be the ceiling of the entire wizarding world. If it can be borrowed, although there are some disadvantages, the benefits definitely outweigh the disadvantages. This is equivalent to promoting some knowledge in the name of Tsinghua University and Peking University in the previous life. Basically, there is no need to exert too much power, and this knowledge will naturally spread out and even be sought after by many people. Many people subconsciously believe it when they hear that it is from Tsinghua University and Peking University. This is the influence of famous schools. Hogwarts has a longer history and a reputation of thousands of years, making it the best in the entire wizarding world. With the help of Hogwarts influence, it will be much easier to promote the new magic system. As for the board of directors, Minerva, can I call you that? I want to ask, can you introduce me to the board of directors? Also, can I join the board of directors? Dear big guys, the average subscription is down again. Please subscribe. Chapter 140 Hogwarts Honorary Board Member. Lockhart's question obviously made Professor McGonagall stunned for a moment, a little surprised. After thinking about it, she understood Lockhart's idea. This is to directly steal the city. However, if Lockhart really joins the board of directors, it would be good. Unexpectedly, given Lockhart's title in Hogwarts and his usual generosity, Professor McGonagall nodded secretly. Unfortunately, of course, Lockhart. But I'm afraid it will be very difficult for you to join the board of directors. Professor McGonagall replied slowly. Then Minerva, there is no hurry. Please introduce me to the board of directors. Lockhart asked directly. He was a little curious about the board of directors of Hogwarts. His knowledge of the world of Harry Potter was limited to the movies he watched in his previous life. He had heard of the board of directors, but he didn't know much about it. However, there was one thing he was very clear about, that is, when Hogwarts was first founded, there was no such thing as a board of directors. I don't know when it popped up, but it is said that the influence is not small. Combined with today's events, it is likely to be a disaster in the future. It is better to get rid of it as soon as possible. In response to Lockhart's request, Professor McGonagall recalled the information about the board of directors and introduced directly the board of directors. Its official name is the Hogwarts School Board. In fact, Hogwarts did not have such a thing as a board of directors before. However, at the end of the last century, Hogwarts once experienced a financial crisis and almost closed down. Later, Principal Armando Dupont thought of a way to resolve the crisis, which was to obtain support from resources such as gold galleons through the channels of the Ministry of Magic. The board of directors was thus created. There are a total of 12 wizards on the board of directors, all of whom are wizards from pure-blood families. Only they have the ability to donate a certain amount of funds to Hogwarts every year to ensure the normal operation of the school. Therefore, they can supervise the operation of Hogwarts School and have certain rights to appoint or temporarily suspend the principal. So, their influence on Hogwarts is not small. After listening to Professor McGonagall's introduction, Lockhart made a simple summary. Yes, indeed. Professor McGonagall nodded gently, expressing her agreement. After all, the school cannot leave the gold galleons, otherwise it cannot operate normally, let alone teach the little wizards. In response, Lockhart nodded gently to show his understanding. No matter which world, those who control financial power always have greater say. Especially for non-profit organizations such as schools, financial power will be more important. Especially for top schools like Tsinghua and Peking University. When he remembered his previous life, the Ministry of Education invested at least tens of billions every year. Note that this is just one school. One school needs tens of billions, and the total amount nationwide is at least 5 trillion. It is conceivable that how much money a school, especially a top school, consumes. The more money is consumed, the more dependent it becomes on the demand for funds, and the more people who control financial power have the right to speak. Otherwise, why can a school board of directors later remove Dumbledore from his position? In the final analysis, Hogwarts is too dependent on the funds of the school board. Thinking of this, Lockhart was thoughtful. Suddenly, Minerva, how many gold galleons does the board of directors provide to Hogwarts every year? Professor McGonagall's expression changed for Lockhart's question. After thinking for a moment, she roughly estimated and said, Lockhart, because Hogwarts itself has some profit channels. But despite this, the board of directors should provide Hogwarts with about 3,000 gold galleons every year. Hiss. Lockhart took a breath of cold air after hearing Professor McGonagall's answer. 3,000 gold galleons every year. Is the cost of education in Hogwarts so terrible? He roughly calculated that according to the wealth of his original body, he would become a pauper at most after 4 or 5 years. And that group of board of directors has persisted for nearly 100 years. No wonder there are 12 pure-blood families. Ordinary families can't afford it. Don't forget that Hogwarts is not a profit-making institution. It is a school that can only swallow, but not give out. The wizards trained are all free people. However, this board of directors is indeed a troublesome matter. If the board of directors is replaced to provide funds for Hogwarts, let's not talk about whether Dumbledore and the others believe it or not. The school board will never give up, not to mention the Ministry of Magic. The twists and turns here will only make things more troublesome. After thinking for a while, Lockhart's eyes lit up, and he thought of a good plan. Minerva, if I donate a certain amount of gold galleons to Hogwarts, can I get some honorary title? At this point, Lockhart also explained to Professor McGonagall, in this way, the school board wants to use this as an excuse, and I can also have a war of words with them. After this explanation, Professor McGonagall understood instantly, and secretly praised Lockhart's intelligence in her heart. With the donation, there is room for justification for the excuse of recruiting assistants in the name of Hogwarts. After all, Lockhart donated money, so what if he used the name of Hogwarts? Didn't the school board gain the corresponding influence because of the donation? If this point is denied, it is equivalent to denying the foundation of the school board's existence. In this way, there is room for wrangling, and once wrangling, it can only be shelved. However, Lockhart, how many gold galleons are you going to donate? This year, donate 600 gold galleons first, and donate 300 gold galleons every year. Lockhart replied according to his own ideas. Since he is going to do something, he might as well do it to the extreme, so that no one can find excuses. 600 gold galleons are equivalent to 1/5 of the annual donation of the board of directors. The 300 gold galleons every year are basically equivalent to the amount donated by a pureblood family, or even slightly higher. In this way, let's see what those pureblood families say. As for gold galleons, don't forget that he just robbed Bella's vault. There are not only Bella's, but also the Lestrange family's accumulation over the years, and some of Voldemort's wealth. Just gold galleons. He roughly estimated that there are about 100,000 gold galleons, not to mention those precious magic items. So he doesn't have to worry about gold galleons in the short term. Not to mention, if his coinage plan succeeds, gold galleons won't be a problem. When Professor McGonagall heard the amount of Lockhart's donation, her eyes lit up instantly, and a bright smile appeared on her face. Lockhart is indeed known as a rich man in Hogwarts. He is really generous, not to mention that he has to provide 300 gold galleons every year. She has already thought about what tools to buy with this batch of gold galleons, what materials to buy. It seems that the school's Quidditch field can be repaired, and there are some magic brooms, some of which are already broken. The idea flashed through her mind, and Professor McGonagall smiled and said, "In this case, Lockhart, I will go back and discuss it with the principal. See if you can have the title of an honorary member of the board of directors. Although I certainly won't have the corresponding rights. But this way, I believe it will be more beneficial to you." Hearing Professor McGonagall's reply, Lockhart's face rose with a bright smile. Professor McGonagall is a person worth making friends with. Well, he remembered that Professor McGonagall liked Quidditch matches, so he could give her some Quidditch tickets or other gifts. Chapter 141 Tom, I like honest students, you know. Voldemort Horcrux Notebook, Soul Space. Tom, how is your soul meditation? Is there any difference from the expected effect? Lockhart sat in front of the desk simulated by the soul space and asked the handsome Tom in a gentle manner. Hearing Lockhart's question, Tom's eyes lit up, and he said excitedly, "Professor, the soul meditation is really good. I have now practiced to the 3rd level and outlined 36 runes. The actual effect is actually better than expected. The speed of improving mental power has reached the expected level. At the same time, the power of soul-related spells has increased by at least 10%, and the consumption has also decreased by about 20%. Well, Tom felt that the contract he signed before was really right. After the contract was signed, the other party gave him something called soul meditation. Let him try to practice it. Originally, he was a little dissatisfied with Lockhart's behavior of treating him as a test subject, but after practicing, he said, "It's really good." He actually found that the soul meditation was actually helpful to his soul fragment. Not only can it improve a certain amount of mental power, but it can also improve the activity of his soul. In other words, he can think more and be more rational. It was as if the negative erosion brought by the original body's long-term study of black magic was gradually dissipating. Not to mention, after signing the contract, he was exposed to more advanced knowledge of runes. This made him very excited and happy. Looking at the excited expression on Tom's face, Lockhart nodded with satisfaction. This meditation method was specially selected by him according to Tom's situation. Soul meditation method, as the name suggests, is to specialize in the soul. With practice, it can not only strengthen the soul, but also improve the purity of the soul. Moreover, as long as you have a soul, you can practice it. Dung. 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 Thinking of this, Lockhart tapped the desk 3 times in a row with his fingertips. Seeing Tom's attention return, he said meaningfully, "Tom, you have to practice this meditation method well. If you practice to a certain level, maybe you can become an independent soul." Hearing what Lockhart said, Tom's pupils shrank, and he felt a little uneasy. Could it be that he discovered his true identity? Then he heard Lockhart continue to say, "In the future, if you want to become a living wizard, a complete soul is indispensable." Hearing this, Tom's heart was slightly relieved, but the previous doubts were still hidden in his heart. What if his identity was discovered? Suddenly, "Tom, talk about your experience with the Slytherin Chamber of Secrets. When I have time, I will also go to take a look." Lockhart looked at Tom, who was in deep thought, and asked, "Oh, okay, Professor." Tom, who had just reacted, answered with surprise. "Going to Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets is good, but the original body has arranged some backups in it. As long as he goes in, he can start it, including the resurrection ceremony. Professor, the Chamber of Secrets is in the women's bathroom on the 3rd floor. Take me there. I can help you open the door to the Chamber of Secrets." Hearing Tom's reply, Lockhart did not give an accurate reply, but asked directly, "Tom, is there any danger after entering the Chamber of Secrets?" Tom said slowly, as if recalling, "Professor, according to Riddle's memory, there doesn't seem to be too many dangers in the Chamber of Secrets. Just need to pay attention to a few magic traps. Well, you take me with you, open the notebook, and I'll remind you when you encounter a trap." At the end, Tom also explained, "Professor, I don't know exactly where the trap is. I can only roughly guess, based on the environment in my memory. These can only be observed when you see it on the spot." In response to Tom's reply, Lockhart nodded slowly, as if he agreed. Then he kept a gentle smile on his face, and continued to ask, "Then Tom, is there anything valuable left in the Chamber of Secrets? After all, if Slytherin's things were taken away by Riddle, then my trip would be in vain. My time is very precious." Seeing Lockhart's expression, Tom's face was happy. He felt that Lockhart had fallen into the trap. Now there was only one step left. After thinking for a moment, he decided to give some useful information and said directly, "Yes, Professor, there is another very valuable thing inside. But that thing can only be in the Chamber of Secrets, so Riddle didn't take it away." "Oh, what is it?" Lockhart asked with great interest. "It is a stone statue with intelligence." Tom continued to explain, "According to Riddle's research, it should be a way for Slytherin to leave a legacy. He can answer the questions of the questioner. It seems that he has a lot of knowledge. Many questions can be answered by asking him. However, the other party seems to have a way of judging. The object of answering questions can only be students or professors of Hogwarts. Of course, the dean and the principal can also be answered. So, after the original body graduated, he lost his identity in Hogwarts, and could no longer get the answers from the stone statue." Hearing this, Lockhart was thoughtful. He remembered that Voldemort was indeed very eager for the identity of a professor of defense against the dark arts, and even cast a curse when he couldn't get it. As a result, his current position changes every year. Maybe this is related to the stone statue left by Slytherin that Tom mentioned. While thinking, Lockhart continued to ask, "Tom, are there any other treasures?" This time, Tom shook his head, indicating that there were none. "Okay, then I know." Lockhart nodded gently, and then his attitude was very gentle and kind, as if he was facing his favorite student. "Also, let me confirm one last time. Are you sure that the only risk in reaching the Slytherin chamber is those magic traps, right?" Hearing Lockhart's question again, although Tom felt a little uneasy in his heart, his face was very sure, and he shook his head again, indicating that there were really none. Then Lockhart stood up, leaned on the desk with both hands. His face was cold, and he stared at Tom opposite him. A hoarse, gloomy, full of weirdness and evil voice came out of his mouth. "Hiss, hiss, hiss, hiss. Tom, then please tell me, what is a basilisk?" Hearing the Parseltongue voice coming from Lockhart's mouth, Tom's face showed horror. Especially when he understood the meaning, his face turned pale. Then, as Lockhart's mind moved, the contract imprinted in the depths of Tom's soul began to suddenly emit a pale golden light, like the sun, burning the soul. Tom immediately curled up on the ground, trembling all over, twisting his body constantly, and making a wailing sound from his mouth. "Professor, what is a basilisk? I really don't know. Let me go. Professor, let me go." Looking at Tom, who was still stubborn, Lockhart slowly left the desk and walked in front of Tom, half squatting, watching Tom, who kept wailing, begging for mercy, and trembling all over. He didn't say anything, just watched silently. After a while, he thought about it, and the contract began to return to normal. Hoo-hoo. Looking at Tom, who was panting heavily and pale, Lockhart had a blank expression on his face, and said in a cold tone, "Tom, I like honest students. You should know this. The information I have is far more than you can imagine. I think you should know it earlier. After you recognize it, I don't want you to play any tricks in front of me. Do you understand? You have to understand that I can make you a living creature, but I can also make your soul fly away. This time, it's a lesson for you. 30 minutes of soul burning. Now there are 25 minutes left. Enjoy it slowly. After saying that, Lockhart thought about it, and the contract in the depths of Tom's soul continued to emit a light golden light, like the sun, continuing to burn the soul. Professor, I don't dare to do it anymore. Let me go next time. I won't dare to do it. P.S. 2 more chapters will be added today, one at 6 o'clock, and the subscription is full of 1200, and the other at 8 o'clock. GT loves his wife, and adds one more chapter at 6 o'clock. Please subscribe and support. Chapter 142 New Wizard Spirit. Lockhart's office. On the white desk, a black notebook, half opened, was placed in the middle. It was faintly visible that the page that was opened was emitting a faint golden light, as if it was showing something. On the chair opposite, Lockhart leaned back in the chair, his chest floating slightly, as if he was sleeping soundly. Suddenly, buzz! The black notebook shook slightly, and a transparent figure emerged from it, floating in the air. At this moment, Lockhart's soul left the Horcrux notebook and returned to the real world. After looking around, he looked at his body and rushed over directly. The moment the soul entered the body, it seemed like a perfect blend, which made Lockhart feel a little comfortable, and he subconsciously cried out softly. After opening his eyes and moving his shoulders, Lockhart put his eyes on the black notebook again, looking at the faint light emitting from the pages, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Tom's soul fragment is a typical one who will tear down the roof if he is not punished for 3 days. He was ready to set a trap to pit himself, even though he knew that he had signed a contract. I hope this lesson will not leave a deep impression on him. However, thinking of the stone statue left by Slytherin mentioned by Tom just now, Lockhart was thoughtful. It seems that it is necessary to try it out. Maybe there will be some gains. Now, with the start of his promotion plan, obstacles have already emerged. He was just about to recruit some research assistants, and it was not even published in the Daily Prophet. The board of directors wanted to suppress it in advance, and even wanted to plunder the results directly. It is conceivable that when the special features of the new magic system are truly exposed later, especially the one that does not rely on magic blood, it will directly stimulate the sensitive nerve of the pure blood family. When Lockhart thought about the resistance at that time, he knew how fierce it would be. Although he felt some pressure, he did not care too much. This is the wizard world, different from the modern world in his previous life. Although the influence of the pure blood family in the wizard world is like spider silk in various fields, but don't forget that for wizards, the most important thing is to speak with strength. He was forced into a hurry. Since Voldemort can rely on strong strength and fear to intimidate the entire wizard world, then he can do the same. What's the matter? Can Voldemort do it? But I can't. If it really comes to this, when he gets stronger in the Marvel world, all the obstacles he encounters will be leveled. Of course, relying on strength and brute force is a strategy that belongs to the lower class after all. It can only gain superficial submission. If you want wizards to devote themselves to the new magic system from the bottom of their hearts, and even be willing to sacrifice their lives, you still have to do it step by step. Difficulties are just the key link in forging a new wizard spirit. Just like the Long March in the previous life, forge the Red Army spirit that shocked the world. What is the new wizard spirit? Lockhart actually didn't have a clear definition, but he knew that when a wizard decided to spend his life pursuing the truth, perhaps the new wizard spirit was formed. After thinking for a moment, Lockhart waved his wand, put the notebook back into the wooden box, and put it away. Then he began to prepare for class. There was only one class today. After the class, he could start to prepare for entering the Chamber of Secrets. He didn't forget the horror of the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets. At night, Filch's cottage. Wingardium Leviosa. Wingardium Leviosa. Filch, with an old face and a hunched body, was waving his wand at the leaves on the desk, casting the simplest levitation spell. In recent days, whether it was day or night, as long as he had nothing to do, he would close his eyes and start meditating. Fortunately, meditation itself has the effect of rest, So Filch did not die suddenly. And the reason why he was so obsessed, even if he knew that there were little wizards wandering at night, he didn't care. It was because he succeeded in meditation. He could feel the magic fluctuations in the air, or the energy particles mentioned in the meditation method. Although he still couldn't cast any spells. But those colorful energy particles gave him hope of casting magic. So, once he was free, he followed the instructions on the parchment and constantly captured energy particles to transform the nature of his mental power. At the same time, through runes, it was converted into magic power to lay the foundation for casting spells. In order to verify whether he could cast spells, every night, he would perform the simplest magic, the levitation spell, based on what he had learned in the previous spell class. Although he had not succeeded once, he kept telling himself that it was almost there, it should be soon. Even though his arms were very sore, he still did not stop waving his wand. Wingardium Leviosa. Wingardium Leviosa. Suddenly, Wingardium Leviosa. As Filch chanted the levitation spell again, the tip of the wand flashed slightly, and then disappeared. The leaves that had been spread on the table trembled slightly and slowly floated up. Then they fell down again. Filch, who had been observing the leaves, was so excited that he trembled all over when he saw this scene. Then, the sound of the spell became more powerful, and the force of waving the wand became stronger and stronger, revealing his inner excitement. Wingardium Leviosa. Wingardium Leviosa. This time, he chanted the levitation spell 10 times, but there was still no improvement. However, when he recited it for the 17th time, Wingardium Leviosa. Whoosh. The wand flashed again, and the leaves swayed slightly, and then began to float slowly into the sky. Seeing this, Filch quickly stabilized his mind and stared at the floating upper leaves. He kept repeating in his mind, float, float, float. It may be because Filch's willpower was too strong, or this time the resonance with magic was stronger. The leaves did not fall again, but slowly floated into the sky. Although the speed was very slow, in Filch's eyes, it was hope. He, a squib, could finally cast magic. At night, the Malfoy family. Today, the Malfoy family villa is different from usual. The lights are bright, as if welcoming important guests. The view goes deep into the villa. On a long dining table, a lot of steaming food is placed on it, and Lucius Malfoy is sitting at the top. On both sides of the table are members of the Hogwarts Board of Directors. This dinner, or meeting, is more appropriate, and it was organized by Lucius. Ahem. After seeing everyone gathered, Lucius, who was sitting in the upper seat, coughed lightly. Seeing everyone's eyes on him, he slowly spoke. You are all members of the school board. I believe you all know the purpose of inviting everyone this time. Although Dumbledore rejected our request, it does not mean that we have completely lost the right to share this cake. We still have many opportunities. This time, we must let Dumbledore know that in the British wizarding world, if we want to accomplish anything, we cannot do without our pure blood family. There will be another update at 8 PM. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143. The promotion of the new magic system begins. In the morning, Lockhart's office. The golden sunlight shines through the glass and falls on the entire office, as if dyed with a light golden color. At this moment, Lockhart is holding a magic book and reading it leisurely. Gugu, the bull bird, who had just finished exercising, looked at Lockhart stealthily. Seeing that the breeder did not notice him, he walked slowly and cautiously towards the door of the office. When he was about to reach the door, he turned his head and took a look, roughly estimating that he was now a certain distance away from the breeder. Then, poof, Gugu quickly flapped his wings and teleported. In a flash, a blue light flashed, and Gugu disappeared in the office. Lockhart, who was sharp-minded, said that all this was in his eyes. Letting Gugu leave was mainly because the exercise task this morning was completed. The next round of exercise would have to wait until the afternoon. So he didn't care, as long as Gugu was safe. These days of getting along, he also knew Gugu's temperament, greedy and active. similar to a child's personality. And raising a child, according to his experience, you can't be too loose nor too strict, otherwise he will develop a rebellious mentality. The best way is to set some goals every day, set appropriate tasks, and help him develop some good habits. Through good habits, you can influence his character and his actions. Of course, the most important thing is that he doesn't have that much time to take care of Gugu. He can only let him roam in this way. To be honest, he still wanted to find someone to help take care of it, and found that the most suitable person around was Hagrid. But according to Hagrid's temperament, it's hard to say. When he sees Gugu, he will become a fat ball escape bird. So, for now, he can only take care of it alone. When he was reading leisurely, suddenly, bang, 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 there was a regular sound from the window. Lockhart turned his head and saw that it was an owl. Looking at the newspaper hanging on the owl's chest, Lockhart's mouth curled up. He quickly opened the window, fed the owl some food, took out the newspaper, and opened it with expectation. After opening the newspaper, the first thing that caught his eye was a huge black headline and a slowly changing picture. The picture was the picture of his original self, that won the Wizard Weekly's Most Charming Smile Award. It must be said that he was able to win the award in this regard, which shows how handsome his original self was. Skipping the picture, Lockhart focused his eyes on the eye-catching headline, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Squib becomes a wizard. Shocking news from Hogwarts. The appearance of the report marked the official start of the promotion plan. Then, Lockhart focused his attention on the following content. How to make a squib become a wizard. This has been a problem in the wizarding world for thousands of years. But after years of research by Professor Lockhart of Hogwarts, hope has emerged. Professor Lockhart said that practicing meditation can make a squib possess magic power and then cast magic. It is said that Professor Dumbledore is very supportive of this and believes that this research is beneficial to the development of the wizarding world. Professor Lockhart said that the meditation experiment is nearing its end and only needs a small-scale test to be promoted on a large scale. Therefore, 100 squibs are now recruited for the final test. During the test, all expenses will be borne by Professor Lockhart, and it is guaranteed that there will be no life-threatening situations. After reading the entire report, Lockhart nodded with satisfaction. As expected of the Daily Prophet, the content of the report is very serious, without any fancy words, and everything that should be said is explained. The rest depends on the effect. Daily Prophet, Editor-in-Chief's office. Editor-in-Chief Cotton sat in his office chair, looking at the opened envelope in front of him, and shook his head in distress. He knew that things would not be solved so easily. Last time, he chose to postpone the release of the report. He set aside a day for the pureblood families and Hogwarts to communicate. Look at this report about the ability of squibs to cast spells. Should it be reported? If the communication between the two goes smoothly, he will naturally receive relevant information. Thus, the news can be easily suppressed. But if it is not received, it means that Hogwarts or Dumbledore is more determined. Then he has nothing to say. He can't afford to offend Dumbledore. He has to publish it directly and choose the biggest and best position. This method will not offend anyone. Even if the pureblood family knows, so what? He gave them a chance, but they just didn't seize it. Despite this, who made him the editor-in-chief of the Daily Prophet, the problem popped up again. This group of pureblood families still didn't give up. They actually asked him to report the news about the high risk of Lockhart's research results. The actions of the pureblood families made him feel a little annoyed. If this matter is reported, the pureblood families will be fine. Wouldn't he offend Dumbledore directly? He became a scapegoat. But he couldn't do nothing, because the Daily Prophet was deeply involved with the pureblood families. Although he was the editor-in-chief, he was powerless. How to solve this problem? Editor-in-chief Cotton kept thinking of a compromise method, at least not to make himself less responsible, and to shift his attention to other people. Suddenly, Cotton's eyes lit up, and he thought of a top-notch troublemaker. He could definitely mess up this muddy water, and it was just right to take on this task. Thinking of this, Cotton picked up the quill and wrote directly. Dear Miss Rita Skeeter, at night, on the 3rd floor of Hogwarts, Lockhart cast an incarnation spell on himself to hide his body. His destination this time was the women's bathroom on the 3rd floor. This could not be seen by others. A professor ran into the women's bathroom. What kind of words? With his mind turning, Lockhart became more cautious to prevent any accidents that might lead to his own disclosure, especially for some ghosts, portraits and the like. This is the focus of prevention, because they are usually silent, and they are very quick to speak. If one knows, then everyone in the circle will know. Then it is really a success. Soon, Lockhart saw the women's toilet. No, to be precise, the girls' bathroom. He pushed open the copper handle on the door, walked in slowly, and looked around first. The environment of the girls' bathroom can be said to be a rather dark and damp place. The walls are stained and mottled, the ground is full of stagnant water, and the row of tiles near the sink are peeling off. The only light source is a few dark candles. Seeing such a bad environment, Lockhart felt a little uncomfortable, but he still walked forward and set his eyes on a wash basin, to be precise, a place on the side wall of the faucet with a small snake pattern engraved on it. After finding the right place, Lockhart turned around and walked to the single room on the side. He did not forget that there has always been a ghost here, Myrtle. If it is not handled properly, it is easy to leak the news because of her existence. Let's not talk about whether the Slytherin Chamber of Secrets will be leaked. Just say that his reputation will be ruined. He was prepared for Myrtle. In the innermost compartment, Ghost Myrtle stayed on the toilet, complaining to herself. Lockhart waved his wand gently. Rest in peace. In an instant, a light grey mist emerged from the tip of Lockhart's wand. Soon, the mist spread all around and enveloped Ghost Myrtle. Because of the special nature of the spell, Ghost Myrtle was not aware of it at all. She just felt that she was getting more and more sleepy, and then she closed her eyes and fell into a deep sleep. Seeing this, Lockhart nodded with satisfaction. The last hidden danger was finally solved. Then, Lockhart set his eyes on the sink, engraved with a small snake mark. He reached out and took out a dark green magic book, which was the one he had refined before, the Parselton book. After turning a few pages, he gently tapped a word on it with his magic wand, infusing it with magic. Instantly, a hoarse, eerie voice came from the book. Hiss. Open. Thanks to the big boss duty for loving his wife. Chapter 144. The Basilisk's Contact Lenses. Boom. Accompanied by the sound of Parselton, the faucet above the sink emitted a dazzling white light and then spun rapidly. Soon, the sink also began to move to the side, revealing a huge hole, which was actually a very thick water pipe. Lockhart walked over on the stagnant water and looked at the dark water pipe hole. With a light wave of the wand, a ball of light quietly emerged and entered the hole. Suddenly, the dark water pipe nearby was illuminated very brightly. Lockhart could clearly see the dirt on the side of the water pipe and the darkness in the distance. After a slight glance, Lockhart waved his wand and outlined a very complex and mysterious rune. Detect life. The moment the rune was formed, a light green mist surged into the water pipe with the wave of the wand. As Lockhart continued to infuse magic power, the light green mist kept emerging and surged into the depths of the water pipe. Lockhart closed his eyes slightly and felt the feedback brought by the spell. Some very subtle life breath, which should belong to cockroaches and insects, was directly skipped. Slightly stronger life breath, but there are so many of them, they should belong to mice and other small animals, so they can be ignored. After a moment, a very strong life breath appeared in his heart, and Lockhart's mouth curled up. Finally found you, the basilisk. Since you are going to enter the Slytherin chamber, the first thing to do is to ensure your own safety. Don't wait until you reach your destination, and then a basilisk jumps out from behind. That scene will be very embarrassing. You say you will turn your head, or not. Therefore, Lockhart planned to subdue the basilisk first at the beginning of the plan. With the Parselton, it is relatively easy to recapture the basilisk. Thinking about it, Lockhart confirmed that the strong life breath clean it up, confuse the audience, transformed quickly. With a thought, Lockhart waved his wand directly, and the silver light enveloped the surroundings, sweeping away the nearby sewage, while creating an illusion to cover up all abnormalities. Then, under the effect of a transformation spell, a clean chair was transformed. Seeing this, Lockhart sat on it directly, observed for 4 weeks without any abnormality, and found a suitable position to lean on. Then soul projection. Lockhart's soul suddenly jumped and appeared outside the body again. After a simple look around, he looked at the flesh leaning on the chair and the dark green Parseltongue book next to it. With a gentle wave of his hand, the Parseltongue book floated up and floated next to Lockhart's soul. After everything was sorted out, Lockhart nodded with satisfaction. The peculiarity of the basilisk is that anyone who looks into its eyes will immediately face the risk of death, and at the very least will be petrified. If Lockhart went there in his physical body, to be honest, he really couldn't be sure. What if he accidentally looked at the basilisk and was killed? How unfair it would be. On the contrary, if he observed in the soul state, with the special nature of the soul shell, he could at least withstand the gaze of the basilisk and avoid it in time. Thoughts flashed through his mind, and Lockhart's soul took the dark green Parseltongue book and flew towards the strong breath of life he sensed. A moment later, Lockhart saw a huge snake tail in a corridor. He immediately realized that the basilisk had been found. With this in mind, Lockhart waved his hands and opened the Parseltongue book. Hiss. Close your eyes. Hiss, come to me. A hoarse, eerie, strange, and evil voice spread from the Parseltongue book to the surroundings. Soon Lockhart saw the tail of the basilisk slowly disappear. After a while, a huge snake head appeared in front of him. What satisfied Lockhart was that the basilisk closed its eyes directly this time, so he didn't have to worry about the risk of being petrified. Although the soul shell can protect itself, it is naturally best to be safe. Then, the Parseltongue book was activated, and the sound was made again. Hiss. Lie down. After hearing the sound from the Parseltongue, the basilisk seemed to feel something, and reacted after a while. In Lockhart's eyes, the basilisk's head began to slowly lower, and the snake brain was close to the water pipe. Seeing this, Lockhart's heart was slightly shocked. He opened the Parseltongue book again, and made another sound. Hiss. Hiss, let go of your mind and don't resist. After the sound disappeared, Lockhart slightly sensed the degree of resistance in the basilisk's heart. After finding that it was indeed greatly reduced, he began to wave his hands directly, outlining a dense pattern of light golden runes. To be precise, it was a magic contract written in runes. Soon, the magic contract was quietly formed. With Lockhart's strong push, the contract flew into the basilisk's mind. Hiss. Accept the contract. At the same time, Lockhart once again ordered the basilisk with the Parseltongue book. But, after the contract floated into the basilisk's mind, Lockhart was very sensitive to find that the other party wanted to resist, and the huge body twisted subconsciously, causing a lot of movement. But with the influence of Parseltongue, the resistance was greatly weakened. In this way, he couldn't help but sigh that the influence of Parseltongue on snake-like magical creatures was really terrifying. After a moment, Lockhart felt the feedback of the successful signing of the contract, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Now, this basilisk can be regarded as truly his. Controlled by Parseltongue, problems are inevitable. After all, Lockhart can use Parseltongue, and it is not guaranteed that other wizards can also use it. Therefore, Lockhart's attitude towards Parseltongue is actually to use it as a transitional tool or a special magic. Only when the basilisk signs a magic contract can he influence, or even control the basilisk through the magic contract. Lockhart will be truly relieved. In any case, the priority of the magic contract is definitely higher than that of Parseltongue. After all, the magic contract directly acts on the soul of the basilisk. With a flash of thought, Lockhart reminded the basilisk through the contract to continue the current action. Lie down and close your eyes. After feeling the basilisk's aggrieved but obedient emotions through the contract, Lockhart nodded slightly. Then Lockhart looked around the surrounding environment and imprinted a magic mark on the surface of the nearby water pipe. Then he quickly flew towards his physical body. A moment later, Lockhart's soul came out of the water pipe hole and saw the physical body leaning on the chair. With a sudden pounce, the soul returned to the body. Slowly opening his eyes, Lockhart looked at the water pipe hole, felt the magic contract just signed, and the current state of the basilisk, and nodded slightly. Then, Lockhart held the ring, and drew a circular portal with sparks. Through the portal, he looked at the basilisk lying on the water pipe with its eyes closed. A faint smile floated on Lockhart's face. He stepped out of the portal and came to the basilisk. Lockhart reached out and took out two huge transparent lenses. This is the magic item that Lockhart had specially made for the basilisk before. Contact lenses. The basilisk will definitely follow him in the future. But the other part is indiscriminate killing method of seeing whoever will die is really too easy to cause trouble. Including his master. If he is accidentally seen, he will be finished. Therefore, for safety reasons, Lockhart still added a safety measure for him. When it is really needed to attack indiscriminately, the contact lenses can be removed. Lockhart compared the size of the basilisk size and slightly modified the size of the contact lenses. Waved the wand to bring it close to the basilisk size. After feeling about the same, Lockhart used the contract to let the basilisk slowly open its eyes. During the whole process of opening the eyes, Lockhart could clearly feel the magic of the basilisk's eyes being absorbed by the contact lens. So he nodded secretly. When the basilisk opened its eyes completely, Lockhart made the contact lens completely blend into the pair of yellow eyes. PS. Thank you GT Love My Wife for the reward. According to the rules, 5 more chapters will be added, and I will try to complete the additions within the next 2 or 3 days. Thank you GT Love My Wife for the reward. Thank you Wheelers UGU for 158 points, Uiwiwiage for 100 points, and Zunaliaguan for 100 points. Thanks to Liang Zehu, A Piece of Cake 2004, Zyro Chao Chang'ar, Dangai Ufi Wu, GT Loves His Wife, WC 401,015,639, Kevin 93, Shuiao. 2018071007394448, Shuiao 2018071007394448. A tribute to Soul Harvest, Imfeel Blue, Haley, Zhang Richard, Cadoil 555, Lena 2, Be Careful I Bite You, Guayu Yangshan, Zephiayu, Ilixon, Lixoning, We Love Ugu, Life is So Boring for the Monthly Tickets. Chapter 145, Unreliable Parcel Tongue. Hogwarts, Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets. Deep in the underground water pipe, there is a slightly dim underground palace. At the edge of the palace, tall and wide stone pillars are on top of the surroundings. On the floor of the palace, large patches of stagnant water can be seen with the naked eye. At this moment, in the center of the palace floor, a huge python or basilisk looked up and stared at the front. The huge eyes of the basilisk emit a faint yellow light, but it can be vaguely seen that something like glass seems to be blocking something. On the head of the basilisk, a handsome blonde man stood on it, as if observing the various complex patterns on the nearby stone pillars. At this moment, Lockhart was observing the dense ancient runes on the stone pillars with great interest. There was a flash of surprise in his eyes. The more he observed, the more he found that Slytherin must have a very deep attainment in the field of alchemy. Every stone pillar here can be regarded as a magical item. These stone pillars, scattered around, act as pillars, as if suppressing something, or calling for something. It can even be said that, if the stone pillar is damaged on a large scale, the entire Slytherin chamber will collapse further. After observing for a while, Lockhart used the contract to let the basilisk slowly lower its head and touch the ground. Soon, Lockhart jumped lightly and stepped on the marble floor of the palace. Stepping on some stagnant water, he walked towards a mural deep in the stone pillar. After a brief look at the content on the mural, Lockhart found that in addition to the content closely related to Slytherin, there were also some scenes related to him and his 3 friends creating Hogwarts. Moreover, according to the content on the mural, it was found that the relationship between the 3 was quite good. As for why the 4 people separated later, some people said that it was because of blood, and some people said it was because of black magic. The specific reason can only be asked by Slytherin himself. Lockhart could only find that the relationship between the 4 people was good through the mural. Therefore, this chamber should have been built during the period when the relationship between the founders of Hogwarts was relatively harmonious. With a flash of thought, Lockhart turned over the Parcel Tongue book in his hand and recalled the method of opening described by Tom, who had been punished. Gently click on the words above, and soon, a hoarse, eerie voice came from the book. Hiss, 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 hiss. In the name of Slytherin, open the Chamber of Secrets. Boom. Under Lockhart's gaze, the mural seemed to receive some command and moved to both sides, revealing a dark corridor. As Lockhart waved his magic staff, a ball of light entered the corridor, dispelling the darkness and illuminating the surroundings. However, the corridor did not seem to be short, or it was cast with a space extension spell. This surprised Lockhart a little. Then Basilisk, shrink your body and go in to explore the way. Lockhart stretched out his hand and waved, pulling the contract to convey his meaning to the Basilisk. He was not stupid. Slytherin was a famous dark wizard. Although Tom said there was no danger, but he did not verify anything and directly believed what Voldemort said. That was really stupid. Shap, shap, shap. Under Lockhart's gaze, the huge body of the basilisk began to tremble, and its size began to shrink slowly. After a moment, it was at least half the size, and it could easily enter the corridor, and there was even a lot of spare space. Seeing this, Lockhart nodded slowly, waved his hand to signal to enter the corridor, and explore the way for him. The basilisk can shrink its body, which is a talent that he only knew after signing the contract. However, the basilisk generally does not shrink its body, and it is most comfortable for them to keep their original body. Only in extremely special circumstances will it take the initiative to shrink, such as escaping. Of course, if there is an order from Lockhart, it is naturally another matter. After a moment, Lockhart raised his eyebrows slightly. He actually found that the basilisk really had no damage, as if there was really no trap, and he also found a spacious space. It seems that Tom, who has been punished, is a good boy. Lockhart nodded slightly, waved his wand, and the ball of light once again poured into the dark corridor, and Lockhart followed closely. With every step, the ball of light will also move forward, always keeping Lockhart's vision bright. The environment of the corridor is different from that outside. The outside may be connected to the underground water pipe, so there is a lot of accumulated water. Although the corridor smelled a bit musty, it was very dry. Tap, tap. As Lockhart walked step by step into the depths of the corridor, he soon came to the spacious space that the basilisk had pointed out. To be more precise, it was a spacious stone chamber. However, the stone statue that Tom mentioned did not exist. On the contrary, in front of Lockhart, there was only a normal square with a huge scroll hanging on it. On the scroll was Slytherin himself, wearing a dark green wizard robe. What made Lockhart feel strange was that, if he guessed correctly, the scroll should have been baptized for nearly 1,000 years, but it looked like new. While he was thinking, suddenly, bang, the entrance to the palace outside was closed with a bang, and a dark green light curtain quietly appeared at the entrance of the stone chamber. It seemed as if no one was allowed to go out. Sensing this scene, Lockhart's face looked a little ugly, and he subconsciously pinched his wand. At the same time, he called the basilisk to keep attacking. Shap, shap, shap. The basilisk's body twisted slightly, rubbing against the ground, and making a rustling sound. It raised its head, shook its snake brain slightly, and spit out its tongue, as if it was sensing something or preparing something. What should I call you? Mr. Portrait, or Mr. Slytherin? Lockhart stared at the strange portrait in front of him, and asked with vigilance. The most abnormal thing in the whole stone chamber was this portrait, that seemed to be brand new. Who would believe it, if it said there was no problem? Hiss, 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 little snake, lie down, don't move. As soon as Lockhart finished speaking, a hoarse, gloomy, weird, and evil voice came from the portrait. It was the voice of the Parseltongue. After hearing it, the basilisk struggled a little, and then slowly lowered its head. When Lockhart heard it, a sneer flashed across his face, and he called out the contract softly, stimulating the basilisk to wake up. In an instant, the basilisk raised its head again, constantly spitting out its tongue, and pretending to attack the portrait. He knew that the Parseltongue was unreliable. Or rather, it was too reliable. So much so that anyone who possessed the Parseltongue could control the basilisk. With a flash of thought, Lockhart waved his wand lightly, and a fireball quietly appeared in the sky, constantly rotating and emitting hot sparks from time to time. Lockhart shook his wand, and the fireball also streaked in the air, as if threatening something. Royner's student, don't worry, I have no ill intentions. Under Lockhart's gaze, the Slytherin on the portrait slowly spoke. and he glanced at the fireball floating in front of him, ignoring it, as if he was not worried at all. Seeing this, Lockhart had a blank expression on his face. Without saying much, he just slightly infused magic power to make the fireball even hotter. At the same time, his voice was flat and boring, and he repeated again, "Please answer my question. What should I call you? Mr. Portrait or Mr. Slytherin?" Chapter 146 Serious Nonsense. "It's alright. You can call me Mr. Portrait or Slytherin." The portrait answered Lockhart's question directly. After that, it asked back, "How should I call you?" "Gilderoy Lockhart, Professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts at Hogwarts." Lockhart answered simply, and continued, "Then I'll call you Mr. Slytherin. What state are you in now? A pure portrait or a residual soul?" In order to prevent Slytherin from avoiding the answer, Lockhart continued to add, "I smell the breath of the soul from the portrait." Hearing what Lockhart said, Slytherin's portrait was a little surprised, and then said with emotion, "It seems that after so many years of development, the level of Hogwarts professors has not decreased, and has even become stronger. You are a professor at Hogwarts. I can answer your questions. But in exchange, you must also answer my corresponding questions." "Okay, no problem." Lockhart agreed decisively. After agreeing, Lockhart continued his questioning. "Tell me, how did you manage to keep your soul immortal for thousands of years? I knew you would be curious about this." The portrait of Slytherin smiled and said, "Do you know about Horcruxes?" "I don't know." Lockhart shook his head, his face revealing confusion, and continued to ask back, "Is it some magical item? Is it related to the soul? Can you tell me about Hogwarts and the wizarding world now?" The portrait did not reply, but asked directly, "Since the promotion of the new magic system, the wizarding world has been very peaceful and developed rapidly." Lockhart said seriously, "Hogwarts has become a holy place in the eyes of many wizards, because of the promotion of the new magic system." "Really?" The portrait asked with interest, "What is the new magic system?" "Mr. Slytherin, you haven't answered my question yet. What is a Horcrux? And what abilities do you have in your current state?" Lockhart asked. "Horcrux." Slytherin seemed to be a little emotional, and briefly introduced, "It is actually a kind of black magic, used to protect the immortality of the soul. As for my ability, I don't have much ability. At most, I can answer some questions." "Oh, I see." Lockhart nodded and also introduced very briefly, a new magic system, based on meditation, which can lower the threshold for learning magic. After hearing this, the portrait of Slytherin frowned slightly and sighed softly, as if he knew that, if he didn't introduce it in detail, the other party would not give further detailed answers. "Do you have any other questions?" Seeing Lockhart, who had not asked any questions, the portrait of Slytherin asked. "Yes." Lockhart nodded, pointed at the dark green light curtain at the door, and asked, "I want to know, what is its function? And how to leave here?" "You have 2 questions?" Slytherin said with a smile, "But I can also answer. This is a forgetfulness spell barrier I set up before. It has no offensive or defensive function. But after passing it, my information will no longer appear in your mind. You will only think that Slytherin has a stone statue to answer your questions." Hearing this, Lockhart was thoughtful. No wonder he felt a familiar taste on the light curtain. It turned out to be the forgetfulness spell. No wonder Tom said there was a stone statue in the secret room. He said that Tom, who was punished, should not lie. After all, he knew everything, as long as he saw it. If he found out, would he want to enjoy an hour of soul-burning package? Thoughts flashed, and Lockhart continued to hear Slytherin's portrait reply. "It's easy to get out. After passing through this barrier of the forget curse, go to the door, and say the same words you came in Parseltongue, and the door will open." Hearing the answer from the Slytherin portrait, Lockhart nodded to show that he understood. Seeing this portrait, he asked 2 questions directly. "Tell me if you are pure blood or half blood. And, what is the new magic system all about?" "I'm pure blood." Lockhart lied, "But I have been growing up in the Muggle world, so I have always used the name Gilderoy Lockhart. My real name should be Gilderoy Malfoy." Lockhart casually pulled out the surname of a pure blood family and explained. "As for the new magic system, after 20 years of development, there are too many things to say at once. When we have time, we will talk about it in detail. With that, Lockhart no longer paid attention to the portrait, turned around and led the basilisk to the dark green light curtain. Then it stopped in front of him. He is not stupid. He has been lying just now, and his words are half true and half false. If he can do it, can it be that Slytherin can't do it? With this thought in mind, Lockhart waved his wand lightly, testing the dark green light curtain formed by the Oblivion spell in front of him. Buzz! A detection spell appeared from the wand and shot towards the dark green light curtain. As a result, the spell went straight through the light curtain, which only trembled slightly without any feedback. Seeing this, Lockhart frowned slightly. The portrait of Slytherin behind him was not annoyed when he saw what had just happened. The introduction just now was indeed true. This dark green light curtain formed by the Oblivion spell could indeed change a person's memory. But there was one thing that was not detailed. That is, he could simultaneously detect all the memories of the person passing by. After all, it was normal to modify the memory after detecting it. After casting several detection spells, he found that there was no feedback. Then he waved his wand lightly, and the hot fireball that was originally floating above flew directly towards the dark green light curtain. Bang! As if it was not hindered by anything, the fireball also passed directly through the dark green light curtain and flew towards the dark corridor. The fire briefly dispelled the darkness, and then it hit the wall of the corridor, making a bang. The Slytherin portrait behind him looked at Lockhart's various tentative behaviors and slowly said, "Lockhart, can I call you that? Don't worry, I guarantee in the name of Slytherin that the light curtain formed by the Oblivion charm will never cause you any harm." After hearing this, Lockhart slowly nodded to show that he understood. Then he waved his wand and cast a few spells, but found that there was no effect. He patted the basilisk next to him, signaling it to go through and give it a try. The basilisk crawled over very obediently. Seeing this, he called the basilisk to crawl back. When the basilisk returned to his side, Lockhart's mouth pulled out a cold arc. After the exploration just now, he found that only his memory seemed to be affected. As for the spells related to memory, especially the Oblivion charm, he was quite familiar with this field. The routine inside. Then, Lockhart turned around and walked directly to the portrait of Slytherin, bowed slightly, smiled politely, and said, "Mr. Slytherin, I'll take my leave first. I'll come back to discuss the new magic system with you later, when I have time." After hearing this, the portrait of Slytherin nodded briskly, as if he had no objection to Lockhart's sudden departure. Then the smile of Slytherin in the portrait froze. In his eyes, Lockhart waved his wand and outlined a circular portal with sparks. Then, he took a step forward and disappeared from his sight with the basilisk. It is expected that there will be 6 updates tonight. 4 basic updates, and then 2 more updates for the leader GT's loving wife, and the 3 more updates added later will continue tomorrow. Chapter 147 Slytherin's Doubts. At night, in Lockhart's office, a portal with sparks quietly emerged. Then, Lockhart took a step out, followed by a basilisk. After closing the portal, Lockhart frowned slightly, looking at the basilisk, which still looked a little huge. Through the contract, he signaled the other party to shrink its body again. Although Lockhart sensed the basilisk's aggrieved emotions, the basilisk continued to shrink its body under his mandatory request. It was directly reduced to the size of an ordinary snake. Seeing this, Lockhart nodded with satisfaction. However, in the face of the basilisk's constant aggrieved emotions, he thought a little, comforted it a few words, and said that he would provide a large amount of flesh and blood of magical creatures later. The basilisk then settled down. At the same time, Gugu, who had fallen asleep, was also awakened. Gugu. The scene of the basilisk's huge body gradually shrinking just now came into view. So, at this moment, Gugu's face was full of fear, flapping his wings, and teleported to Lockhart's shoulder. At the same time, it flapped its wings, covered its eyes, shivered, and clung to Lockhart's neck, as if looking for a sense of security. Lockhart felt the reaction of Gugu, and the corners of his mouth curled up, as if he had thought of something. However, feeling the trembling Gugu, he quickly conveyed the message of safety and comforted it. Hiss. At the same time, Lockhart also saw the basilisk constantly spitting out its snake tongue, and the look it gave Gugu was even more wrong, with some helplessness in its eyes. He quickly signaled to the basilisk that this was not food. Gugu was his pet and your future friend, and it could not be eaten. After a lot of trouble, he finally settled the two magical creatures under his hands. Gugu also stood on the desk, carefully looking at the basilisk swimming on the ground. And the basilisk, because it could not be eaten, did not even look at Gugu, and prepared to find a cool place to rest. Its owner told him that, after it had a sleep, there would be a big meal tomorrow for him to enjoy. At this moment, Lockhart sat on the desk and carefully recalled the issues he had just discussed with the Slytherin portrait. Slytherin uses Horcruxes. This was a little unexpected for Lockhart, but it made sense, after thinking about it. Although Slytherin was one of the 4 founders of Hogwarts, his reputation as a dark wizard has been passed down to this day. Isn't it normal for a top dark wizard to use Horcruxes? Perhaps Voldemort's use of Horcruxes was also influenced by Slytherin. Thoughts kept emerging in his mind, and Lockhart carefully weighed the impact of Slytherin's survival. Although the other party is just a Horcrux, for a top dark wizard, as long as a soul still exists, it does not mean complete death. While thinking, Lockhart's mouth curled up, and he thought of a good plan. Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets, deep in the stone chamber. Looking at Lockhart's disappearing figure, Slytherin in the portrait frowned. What on earth is going on? Is Hogwarts anti-apparition ineffective? You know, when I was setting up the Chamber of Secrets, I even took precautions against the goblin's teleportation spell. How could someone leave in front of me through the teleportation space? What happened in the wizarding world? What about the so-called new magic system? Could it be that all this was made up by Lockhart? Recalling the way Lockhart left again, Slytherin shook his head slowly. It's impossible that it was all fake, but it should be half true and half false. However, when Lockhart's series of performances in the stone chamber emerged in his mind, Slytherin was a little speechless. He just wanted to understand the current situation of the wizarding world through his memory, but the other party's series of distrustful actions broke Slytherin's heart. He is the founder of Hogwarts. Is it possible that he would do something to his students? If he really wanted to do something to him, the little wizard who came in last time would have done it long ago. Well, it stands to reason that the little wizard should have grown up now and should be not young anymore. I just don't know how he has developed recently. I can ask him next time. He remembered that the other party's name seemed to be Tom Riddle. While thinking, Slytherin closed his eyes again and fell asleep. Although he was a little curious about the new magic system mentioned by Lockhart, but he was not in a hurry. As long as Hogwarts existed, he could live forever. He would definitely get what he wanted to know in the meantime. It was just sooner or later. And when Hogwarts was destroyed, he would be the last guarantee. The next day, at noon, in the Hogwarts cafeteria, a group of little wizards enjoyed a delicious lunch at the table. They ate and chatted, and from time to time they looked at Professor Lockhart who was eating in front of them. The world changes so fast. Yesterday it was said that Professor Lockhart's research results shocked the whole world, but today it was said that Professor Lockhart's research was highly risky and might even be fake. A 5th year Ravenclaw student said with some emotion, "I support Professor Lockhart. Besides, we all know who Rita Skeeter is. She fabricates fake news all day long." A Ravenclaw girl said, "Besides, Professor Lockhart is so handsome, how could he lie?" Did you see Professor Lockhart's expression? He seems to be in a bad mood. A Gryffindor girl said to her boyfriend. "No, you saw it wrong." The boyfriend next to her looked up and saw Professor Lockhart eating with relish and continued, "I don't think Professor Lockhart is unhappy. You saw it wrong. Professor Lockhart was scolded in the newspaper today. He must be in a bad mood." Seeing his girlfriend say it with certainty, the boy felt a little lonely. He knew that his girlfriend had always regarded Lockhart as an idol, but he didn't expect that just a negative report about Professor Lockhart would cause his girlfriend to be so sensitive. She didn't seem to care about him so much. "Harry, this Rita Skeeter is so abominable." Ron took a bite of the chicken leg and said viciously, "We have all practiced the meditation method, and the effect is very good. It's only been a few days since practicing the meditation method. I feel much better." Harry looked at Ron who was muttering in his mouth, and nodded in agreement. He also practiced the meditation method and the effect was indeed good. However, He felt that Ron's condition seemed to have nothing to do with the meditation method. He was purely aroused by the magic bracelet. Of course, it could also be an illusion. At this moment, Lockhart was enjoying today's feast. The house elves of Hogwarts made another delicacy according to their own recipes. Suddenly, Lockhart, I read the report on Rita Skeeter. It's not worth getting angry about such a person. Professor Sprout next to him comforted Lockhart. Next to Professor Sprout's desk, there was a newspaper, which was today's Daily Prophet. It says, an explorer says he has created results that shock the world. Do you really believe it? Rita Skeeter. There will be 2 more chapters in the evening, one at 6 and one at 8 o'clock for the leader. Chapter 148 Rita Skeeter's report. Who is Lockhart? As we all know, he is an explorer and a best-selling author. But in our memory, he has never called himself a researcher, nor has he published any research results. We have to wonder, is what he said about making squibs into wizards true? Or is he just making up a gimmick for his declining fame? According to in-depth research by reporters and Hogwarts students of the same period, Gilderoy Lockhart mentioned during his school days that his wish was to be a star. This shows that he is extremely obsessed with fame. When Lockhart became a professor at Hogwarts, he chose to use all the books he wrote as textbooks. We have to ponder the reasons behind his behavior. Is it for gold galleons, or for fame, or both? Any research is undoubtedly obtained after years of painstaking research and repeated verification. And Lockhart used to publish a book every year, and hold fan meetings everywhere. We have reason to wonder where he got the time for research. If it's true, I'd like to call him a master of time management. If his research is true, maybe it can really make us squib a wizard. We need to think about one thing. Is this research really his? Is there a possibility he obtained the research results of his predecessors at Hogwarts and took them for himself? Otherwise, it's hard to explain. Before joining Hogwarts, no research results were produced. And after joining, it took only 1 month to produce a research result that can be called top-notch. Professor Sprout once again saw this report that tempted wizards to question every word. Looking at Lockhart, who seemed to turn his grief and anger into appetite, she subconsciously comforted him. She felt that Lockhart was a good person. He gave her a lot of unknown plants and a set of skincare products some time ago. In addition, Rita Skeeter's reputation is really not good. So, she directly stood on Lockhart's side to comfort him. At this moment, Lockhart was enjoying the food with relish. Hearing the comforting voice in his ear, Lockhart smiled and said to Professor Sprout, who looked worried, "Don't worry, Professor Sprout. I know what kind of person Rita Skeeter is. I won't get angry with such a person." "Ah, I see." Professor Sprout felt a little confused when he heard it. It was a little different from what he thought. Lockhart himself was scolded so badly in the newspaper, and there were doubts about his character and ability. And he comforted himself, as if nothing had happened. This made her a little confused, so she could only nod and return to her seat. Lockhart glanced at the familiar words and pictures in the Daily Prophet again, and the corners of his mouth curled up. This newspaper was received this morning. After reading it, there was not much surprise, but it felt very normal. If the pureblood family does not take action, then there will be problems. Who knows where there is a big mine buried for him, waiting for him to step on it. Since he chose to promote his own magic system, there is already a general story about what obstacles he may encounter. The pureblood family's move of publishing in the newspaper to exert public opinion was within his expectations. Why should he be angry? Don't forget, what is his identity? In addition to being a Hogwarts professor, he is a best-selling author, and his fans are all over the British wizard world. Speaking of public opinion, such a good advantage, he must make good use of it. However, Rita Skeeter might be able to make some plans. The pureblood family has made a move. Then he can't fall behind. In the afternoon, Hogsmeade, Rita Skeeter's home. The sun shines through the glass and falls into the living room. The tables and chairs in the living room are arranged very neatly, and the air is filled with the smell of aromatherapy. Entering the main door, you can see a very conspicuous bookshelf on the left wall by turning your head slightly, on which are placed various books, trophies, newspapers, etc. These are all specially arranged by Rita Skeeter. She thinks this is her honor, and she wishes everyone who enters her house can see it. At this moment, Rita Skeeter sat on the sofa in the living room, legs crossed, holding a newspaper in her hand, looking at the article she wrote through a pair of jeweled eyes, with a satisfied smile on her face. This report was written very well. Not only did it gain a lot of fame, but it also earned a lot of gold galleons. As for Lockhart, the protagonist in the report, sorry, she is not familiar with him. However, someone reminded her that this is a hot spot, and there will be a lot of benefits if she touches it. Of course, she gave it a try. Gilderoy Lockhart, she can afford to offend him. Suddenly, bang bang bang, there was a sound outside the window. Rita Skeeter looked up and found that it was an owl and a letter. She waved her wand and opened the window. In a few seconds, the owl delivered the letter to her. However, the weight of this letter was a little wrong. It was heavier, and it didn't feel soft, but hard. This made her a little guessing. According to the usual practice, she fed the owl some food, and Rita Skeeter opened the envelope. Seeing the familiar golden light, the corners of her mouth curled up. Then wow, wow, wow. As Rita Skeeter tilted the envelope, a series of gold galleons fell on the table, making a rustling sound. She roughly counted and found that there were at least 10 gold galleons, which was less than half a month's salary for her. Such an unexpected surprise made her open the envelope excitedly. Then Rita Skeeter's face rose. She saw a very familiar mark, Beetle. Then, the envelope read, Dear Animagus, Ms. Beetle. We read the report you wrote today, and it was very good. The 15 gold galleons in the envelope are counted as a deposit. We also need you to write another report, which will be paid 35 gold galleons. For the specific matters, we will meet tonight to discuss them in detail. Rita Skeeter looked at the address below, her face uncertain. She was an unregistered animus in the wizarding world. This was her biggest secret. It was leaked. What's more troublesome is that even the animal she transformed into, Beetle, was known to others. If the Ministry of Magic knew about this, she would. When she thought of the Ministry of Magic officials and pureblood family members she had exposed, she felt a chill all over her body and looked around cautiously, as if she was being watched. After a moment, she looked at the address of the other party's invitation in the envelope, and a cruel look appeared on her face. Chapter 149, Skilled Forgetfulness Spell. At night, in an alley in Hogsmeade. Now it was almost midnight, and the originally noisy Hogsmeade had become much quieter, and the alley was even more deserted. At this moment, Rita, through the beetle transformed by the animagus, stayed at the entrance of the alley. In the afternoon, she received a letter that seemed very polite, but was actually full of threats and inducements. The letter asked her to wait for a meeting in this alley. There was no way. She was an illegal animagus, and this handle was firmly grasped by someone, so she had no choice but to rush to the alley as the letter said. But she was not a woman who could be manipulated by others. While thinking, she continued to lean against the shadows to cover her figure. Fortunately, her animagus was a beetle, which was very easy to hide. As time passed slowly, it was close to the agreed time, and there was still no figure in the alley. This made her a little anxious. After a while, suddenly, tramp, 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 there was a sound of hurried footsteps. Rita saw a figure in a grey wizard robe walking into the alley. She quickly followed him. If she guessed correctly, this should be the wizard who asked her to meet. Soon, the wizard stood in the middle of the alley, leaning against the wall, motionless. And she, the beetle incarnation, flew over quickly. After getting closer, she carefully looked at the wizard's appearance. Grey hair, unfamiliar face, and wizard robes were just the most common style. This gave her a bad premonition. But after thinking about it, she decided to proceed according to the original plan. So fainted. Rita instantly untied the animagus, waved the wand quickly, and cast a coma spell. The grey-haired wizard had no time to react, was hit by the spell, and then fell to the ground. Seeing this, Rita walked to the grey-haired wizard, put away the wand at his waist, helped him up, and leaned against the wall, looking at the dark alley around. Then confused the audience. Bless everyone. Bright and bright. Rita waved her wand and cast several spells in succession. A transparent wave followed the wave of the wand, covering the surroundings, creating an illusion to prevent others from entering. Then, a ball of light appeared, and the originally dark alley became bright. Under the light, Rita looked at the ordinary looking, very unfamiliar grey-haired wizard again. She reached out and took out a bottle of milky white potion, truth serum. She waved her wand, controlled the unconscious wizard to open his mouth, and Rita carefully put 3 drops of truth serum into his mouth. Then clear spring water. Rita waved her wand, and a stream of clear water gushed out of the wand, waking up the wizard. "Who are you?" When the wizard, who had just woken up, looked at the strange witch in front of him, his face was full of horror. Rita didn't intend to answer the grey-haired wizard's question, so she asked directly, "Who are you? Do you know who I am? What are you doing in this alley?" A series of questions were thrown directly at the grey-haired wizard, who was about to curse. Result, it seemed as if Rita's question had opened a certain node, and the truth serum that had just entered his body quickly took effect. The grey-haired wizard felt that his hands and feet were stiff, his brain was heavy, and his consciousness was a little fuzzy. Then, his face couldn't help twitching, and his tongue seemed to move uncontrollably. The wizard was horrified to find that he could not control himself, and began to answer the questions of the strange woman in front of him. "I'm Lal Sorge. I don't know who you are. Tonight a wizard came to see me and asked me to wait in this alley. Give her the envelope in your hand." The wizard answered Rita's questions with a big tongue. After hearing this, Rita frowned and sighed softly. Hey. Sure enough, this wizard was just an errand boy. Just now, she saw the wizard's most common wizard robe, and his whole body revealed the aura of an ordinary wizard. There was a bad association in her mind, and after verification, it was true. Looking at the horrified grey-haired wizard, Rita continued to ask, "Where is the envelope?" The wizard said uncontrollably, "It's in my trouser pocket." Rita took a look, and with disgust, she reached into the wizard's trouser pocket and took out the folded envelope. She opened the envelope, glanced at the contents on it, and put it back. Folded it according to the original crease, and put it back into the wizard's trouser pocket. Looking at the panicked wizard, Rita took out another bottle of light green magic potion, and ripped a few drops into the wizard's mouth to remove the properties of the truth serum. Then forget everything. Rita waved her wand and a forget spell was skillfully shot into the wizard's brain. As her mind turned, Rita quickly cleared the wizard's memory of being knocked unconscious and interrogated by her after entering the alley. While cleaning, she controlled the grey-haired wizard to return to the position where he had just stood. Looking at the lifeless wizard, Rita put his wand back into her waist, cancelled the spell, and transformed into a beetle again. Observe the state of the grey-haired wizard. At this moment, the grey-haired wizard Lal Sorge only felt a blackness in front of his eyes and a little dizzy. When he opened his eyes again, he found that he was still in the alley. There was nothing unusual. He muttered to himself that drinking was harmful to the body and continued to wait in the alley according to the instructions of his employer. The employer said that, as long as he delivered the envelope to the witch, he would get 1 gold galleon. For him, it was a huge sum of money, and he didn't know how much wine he could buy. The beetle that Rita turned into was very satisfied when he saw that the grey-haired wizard was normal and secretly praised his skills. She can become a famous reporter in the entire wizard world. In addition to her good writing skills, the most important thing is that she is an illegal animagus. Her animagus is a beetle, which allows her to peek into the privacy of many wizards at will, allowing her to write hot news. Of course, what she is best at is exaggerating and distorting those privacy, because this is the easiest way to attract people's attention. As an illegal animagus, confidentiality is crucial. Otherwise, once her identity is leaked, she will be sent to Azkaban. And when she was peeping, sometimes, because of some accidents, her identity as an extraordinary animagus was leaked. Her usual method is naturally to cast a forgetfulness spell to destroy all evidence. If she suspects that the other party has a backhand, then the truth serum can also make him speak. So all along, her identity has never been leaked. It's a pity that this time the other party was so cautious and hired someone to come casually. This is not like the style of the pureblood family. It's normal for them to come here in person when they are so arrogant. Well, Rita had some guesses about the person who wrote to her. She had just written a report on the research results of Black Lockhart, and the other party came to praise her and asked her to continue writing. Who else could it be besides the pureblood family? With a flash of thought, Rita flew out of the alley and transformed into a wizard again to cover her appearance. As if he knew nothing, he entered the alley and completed the task. A moment later, Rita held the envelope in her hand, watching the grey-haired wizard leave, and fell into deep thought. Since she didn't see him this time, she must see him next time. As long as she sees him, all her traces will be cleared. No evidence can be left behind. Otherwise, even if she doesn't go to Azkaban, she will be controlled by others for the rest of her life. With this thought in mind, Rita walked towards the alley in trance. Then, fainted. Not good. A familiar white light appeared, and thoughts quietly emerged in Rita's mind, and then, everything in front of her eyes went dark. Chapter 150, Conquering Rita Skeeter. Hogwarts, Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets, Underground Palace. The originally dim and spacious underground palace has now changed its appearance. The large area of stagnant water on the ground has disappeared, leaving only the clean marble floor. The debris and dust on the surrounding stone pillars have also been swept away, including the stains on the surface of each stone pillar. Dense runes are exposed, and as the magic flows, some faint light is faintly emitted. In the middle of the underground palace, there is a very conspicuous simple cross. On the shelf, a blonde witch is tied. Of course, the most conspicuous is a huge basilisk. At this moment, the basilisk raised its head and looked at the prey brought back by its master with its huge yellow eyes. And his master, Lockhart, was opposite the cross, looking at the witch Rita Skeeter with interest. Rita Skeeter really made him look at her with new eyes. Originally, he wanted to dig a hole for the pureblood family through Rita Skeeter, so he wrote a letter. In order to ensure that Rita does what he says, he deliberately emphasizes that he knows the other party's illegal animagus identity. At the same time, in order to prevent his identity from being leaked, he specially wrote a letter in the tone of a pureblood family and hired a wizard to help deliver the letter. In order to ensure that the plan is foolproof, and he is also interested in Rita Skeeter, a famous reporter. So, watch from the side how this Rita wizard responds to his request. But what he never expected was that this Ms. Rita Skeeter was so decisive that she directly knocked down the wizard who delivered the letter and interrogated him with truth serum. In the end, she also used the forgetfulness spell very skillfully to erase her own traces. TSK. As expected, the characters who can leave their names in the original book are not too simple. Originally, his impression of Rita Skeeter was that she was a reporter who could only distort reports. But now it seems that with the other party's decisiveness, she can definitely step into the ranks of talents. Well, originally he just wanted to use Rita Skeeter and clean up after the matter was over. There was never the idea of cooperation. After all, pig teammates are more terrible than god enemies. But now it seems that with her decisiveness, she might be able to play a big role. Not to mention her ability to distort facts and guide public opinion. With his mind turning, Lockhart thought about how to subdue Rita Skeeter. Darkness. After a white light, it was all dark. After Rita Skeeter regained consciousness, the first picture in her mind was the white light before she fainted. What is the white light? It's familiar. It seems to be stunning spell. When the word stunning spell appeared in her mind, Rita's consciousness began to recover quickly in an instant. She felt her brain begin to feel groggy and then slowly wake up. Her breathing also began to become stronger. I was knocked unconscious. After waking up, or thought slowly emerged in Rita Skeeter's mind. Then, she felt as if her hands and feet were bound or tied with ropes. Rita tried hard to open her eyes. Then Rita, who had just opened her eyes, saw a huge snake head appearing in front of her, and she screamed in shock. Hiss. Rita's sharp voice seemed to startle the basilisk. Its head shrank back slightly, and then it spit out its tongue and made a hissing sound. Rita could sense the coldness brought by the tongue. She turned pale with fear, fearing that this huge python would eat her. It seemed that she knew that the sound just now had frightened the giant snake. Rita didn't dare to say a word and gritted her teeth desperately. Even though her whole body was trembling and her teeth were chattering, she still didn't dare to make a sound. Then little snake, back off. A gentle voice came to Rita's ears. Then, she saw the huge basilisk retreating backwards. Rita's inner fear was slightly reduced, and then she quickly looked at the place where the sound came from. Professor Lockhart Ritter saw a very familiar face and couldn't help but exclaimed. Then, as if she thought of something, her face became even paler. Her report was really written with her heart. In order to get her gimmick and traffic, she had been smearing the other party since school and even questioned his character and ability in all aspects. In such an environment, seeing the other person, how could she not know what happened? Thoughts quickly spun in her brain, constantly thinking about ways to survive. Her instinct told her the best solution. That was to use the animagus. Result Ritter, who had just visualized the beetle and was about to transform. But a current slid through her body and Ritter trembled all over and instantly lost all control of her body. Ritter Skeeter, don't waste your energy. Your animagus won't work here. Lockhart looked at the struggling Ritter and said in a cold tone. Hearing Lockhart's answer, Ritter Skeeter's eyes flashed with disappointment. Then, in her mind, a flash of inspiration came to her mind, and she asked in a panic. Is it you? Is it you who wrote the letter to me? Yes, Miss Skeeter. Lockhart nodded slowly to confirm. After hearing Lockhart's reply, Ritter explained in a panic. Professor Lockhart, I really didn't mean to write this report. It was the purebloods, the pureblood families asked me to write it. And the information above was all told to me by them. They also threatened me, saying that if I didn't write it, they would make me unemployed and bankrupt me. Lockhart looked at Ritter Skeeter constantly defending herself and putting the blame on the pureblood families, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Then, shush. Lockhart put his index finger between his lips and made a shushing sound, signaling silence. After seeing this, Ritter was very obedient and stopped talking immediately. Seeing Ritter's actions, Lockhart imitated Snape and pulled a cold smile on his face, putting more pressure on Ritter. Ritter looked at Lockhart's expression and felt even more panicked. Miss Skeeter, I read your report. Lockhart said indifferently and continued as if commenting. I have to say that your writing is pretty good. And your identity is the reason why you are still alive. Hearing Lockhart's plain but oppressive words, Ritter's mind immediately began to spin rapidly. The reason to live is to have hope to live. What is the so-called hope? Is it? Professor Lockhart, I can help you deal with the pureblood family. Ritter answered decisively. My animagus allows me to sneak into the pureblood family and eavesdrop on the intelligence. Ritter thought about it and found that Professor Lockhart seemed to have a lot of conflicts with the pureblood family, and this is the only value she has in it. She can't continue to write articles to discredit Lockhart. Hearing Ritter's reply, Lockhart stared at Ritter Skeeter. Seeing Ritter was a little hairy, he said in a cold tone. Eavesdropping intelligence, you can do it later. For now, I need UPS. Today I will continue with 6 chapters. Thanks to Hang Yu, Jinji Beiji, book friend 140,705,025,431,466. Bugs in the book house, book friend. 20210530832054115 ZHU Zixin, Ulrich Zhao, Cheyenne Changu, Biris, Luz Hugson, Breeze, Whisper, Bayonet Step Forward, Deogsuan V, Zioruan's monthly ticket. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.